But yeah, with that Kung Fu Panda thing, with the Patan thing, it's the same thing. It's the young ingenue come through and the old guy gets pushed out. And it's being pushed out when you don't want them to necessarily go. And I
The
can't tell.
Kathleen Kennedy syndrome.
And I can't tell if it's like, okay, I'm tired, I want to give it up. But like I said, it's a voiceover thing. So how tired can you be for that check? Especially when it could be a situation where you don't have to even be in costume, you don't have to shave, you don't take a shower. You could be in your closet in your house and do voiceover work. So I can't tell if it's just a story making it lean, because we've seen that with, Star Wars, and we've seen that with Marvel stuff. We've seen that with everything. So
one of the interesting ones, but the sequel wasn't obviously as popular as the first movie, was Aladdin, because Robin Williams wasn't in that second movie, so it wasn't as popular. But I mean, it could still be done in terms of, like, I could understand why actresses don't necessarily want to keep doing a certain role, because that's part of being like the mindset of an artist is they don't like to fall into some kind of a typeset, and
yeah,
so they get into these things where, like, I don't want to do this character anymore. So I can kind of get that.
Robin Williams is that he was pissed because they
too.
kind of broke the contract. That's different.
Yeah.
Because you've seen he came back on a third one. So that was different because they misused his voice.
But I mean, I do understand, like you said, for Optimus Prime, where I still forever want it to be the guy that does it, that
Peter Cullen.
Peter Cullen. But the thing that irritates me, not so much that, is like what I was saying earlier, where it's a beloved character, and then you try to, when the characters, I would argue that, I mean, obviously I haven't seen the fourth one, but Jack Black's character is still, like, would be viewed as in their prime.
Yeah.
There's no need to, like, Star Wars is different because there's such a gap between the original and the later series where Luke Skywalker is like all an older man. So I can see where he's kind of like off to the side. They still have him, but not as a primary character.
But you don't have to do them wrong. You don't have to kick them off, and you could continue on with your new characters and let them fend for themselves.
Yeah, and then just have
versus pissing over the ones that we like. So, like, if you have no need for it anymore, don't do ours wrong. Go ahead and mess yours up if you want to. Take your chances on what you want to do, but don't mess up ours. It's kind of like playing in the same sandbox. Leave my tools and my shovel and my bucket over here and do your due. You do your best sandcastles you could do and all that kind of stuff. But if it doesn't work out, don't kick mine over because yours is not working out.
Well, what they should do, or what they can do, is you still have Jack Black's character, and then the Aquafina character I comes in as kind of like the partner, and that would be a test to see how people respond to that character. And if it's a popular enough character, have that character have its own spin-off. I mean, you could do that too, and then you can't really complain that that character is in their own separate thing versus being horning in on the main character that we all grew to love, and then basically taking over.
But they normally know that that's not going to work out, and that's why they anchor them to somebody that's already popular. Not popular enough for them to treat them right and look after them, but popular enough to drag something that nobody else is asking for.
Yeah, but but that original, the way they're doing it now, or what they appear to be doing, is more of a bait and switch. You know what I'm saying? It's like I'm coming into this movie because I want to watch Jack Black's character, but then you end up not getting Jack Black's character, you end up getting Aquafina's character. So that would irritate me more. But I understand that from the economic standpoint why they do that, but it still doesn't take away that it's just irritating for fans to have to go through that.
Right. Like I said, they could have tested her out on some Disney or some other kind of show and had their little cartoon segment with just her and see how it works out. They could have did that too, and then they would have saw what it would have happened, and then they would have had no excuse. But sometimes they don't care, and like I said, they'll just anchor it. They want what they want, and so they'll tie it.
I mean, but imagine if they did that. I mean, I know it's only been one movie, right? Barbie's only been the one movie, but imagine if, like, they're able to do like a couple more Barbie movies, and they did that where Margot Robbie's Barbie is kind of shunted out to the side, and there's I'm curious if they would ever do that, like, because it always seems to be when they do that on IPs, it's always on the male characters. You notice it always seems to be the male characters,
Yeah.
the popular male. I don't really see them doing that with like female characters that are like beloved, you know, where they try to like supplant them with somebody else. But I
Yeah.
mean, if there is something you think of, let me know. But it seems to be
No,
always,
it's in their favor. So why? Yeah, and like I
oh,
said,
okay, I see what you're saying.
but
Because
it's just
Barbie's already
right,
is already like what they idealize what they want, you know, like it
right.
fits the
But
mold.
it's funny because they would never make Barbie a Ken movie, but they would make a Ken movie a Barbie movie. They would
Yes,
make Star Wars a Barbie movie. They would make Marvel stuff a Barbie movie.
yes,
But it would never be the other way around, where it'd be a woman-driven movie and they make it a man. The man would be inferior. The man would be incompetent. The man would either not exist. The man would be gay, but it would
yeah,
never be stepping on the toes of whoever that lead person was, ever.
yes. If it's a woman,
If
yeah, that's true.
right,
Well, I was saying
so
it from the point is, yeah, what if Barbie was like, what if Aquafina became like the next like central character as a Barbie? I mean, that's still a woman, but it's
Well,
not like a white woman. You
well,
know what I
they
mean?
can get away with that because there's different types of Barbies, dolls.
Mhm.
So as long as she's not the blonde Barbie, if she's whatever Barbie, you know, Barbie from Hong Kong or whatever, I don't know. But they have different Barbies, there's black Barbies, there's all kinds of different Barbies. So that would be an interesting conversation and interesting thing to see how that would play off. But at the end of the day, from what you guys are talking about, it's just a question of being creative and a lack of creativity. Because why latch on to an existing, entity? If you want to create something new, then create something new. Period. And then market it and promote it and see what happens. Don't just go back to Old Faithful and take something that's known and try to distort that and change that or kick that to the side for something new. Because a lot of that has to do with ageism as well. But the only male character that we have that we've seen consistently change and that we've all been okay with was basically James Bond.
Yeah. Well, yes, because James
Basically,
Bond,
yeah. So that's it. I mean, in regards to a male character that we all know and love, and watching the movie theater, we know, okay, this is a new Bond, and a new person, new Bond, new identity. I mean, there's going to be different characteristics that we're going to either like or not like about that person playing Bond. So, but we haven't seen that with like female characters. You guys are right. It's interesting. I mean, they might be able to do that with Barbie. It'd be interesting. But what they've done with Doctor Who, they distorted that.
yeah,
can
I
they put an
heard that.
agenda? Like I said, it'd be different if it was naturally got there, however it went there. But it's almost kind of like they're gonna jam it in regardless. Now, if something's oh, this is a cool take, and we honestly got a cool take for it, then that's cool. But just to make it a minority or to make
Just
it a
because,
female, the evidence of how it happened is just very obvious, more obvious than I think that they think that it is. They think they're being slick, and just because it fills in a slot that people bypass how it happened. It's just like, oh, they'll just be happy that I switched their sandwich for a burger. And it's just like, well, the people went for a sandwich, and even though it might be a better burger and you like it, that's not what they came to that restaurant for. So you switching it up like that, that's not, you're gonna get kicked back for the fact that it's mislabeling, even if it is good. So say they did do that, and it's like, oh, that's a damn good burger, better than that sandwich. But still, guess what? I thought that's not what I wanted today. That's not what I came here for.
Yeah.
So even if in best intentions, advertise right and let people decide. But then they know if they advertise it right, what would happen. So that means don't do it, or make it such a compelling burger that they'll want it even though they wanted a sandwich. But that requires work and talent.
A perfect example, and this would prove the whole thing, that it has nothing to do with like a misogynistic attitude towards like female-based characters attached to some kind of powerful IP. The upcoming Furiosa movie, that you could see by that trailer. If you guys seen that Furiosa trailer, it looks like it's going to be really good, and she's the primary character, and that's the perfect example of what I was talking about, where in the first movie she's kind of the main character, but isn't Hardy's like Tom Hardy's like the main character in that one, right? In the first movie.
He's not really the main character, but he is the person we're hanging on to until Furiosa shows up.
Yeah,
He's like the
but
placeholder because he doesn't speak
yeah.
or anything. So he's kind of like we're on his back to get us into the situation, but then the whole realization of what's going on and the journey is all Furiosa.
Okay, but I mean that's what I'm talking about. Where Furiosa at first in that movie is not the price. She becomes part of it later on in the movie.
Yes.
And then now you can literally have another movie just about her origin story. And it's like, you could tell by watching it, like that you don't care that it's a woman. It's just,
it was a fair handoff too. And you saw how she tied into the story. She was actually part of the story. And since that guy's the creator of it, then of course he's gonna have more information and actually know how to do it versus somebody telling him, hey, let's just make it you could speak to the times and do things, but I'm just saying if you're gonna do it, make sure you're doing it in a way where the trick about being an artist, a writer, or anything is to be able to do things where people can't see your sketches or people can't see, foresee your thoughts. You want them to be surprised as you go along. You want to unveil and they notice, because you guys are both writers. So you know how the importance of that is versus like, as soon as they showed that I knew this, you try to erase your footprints, right? So that's all I'm asking. Erase your footprints because it's insulting, especially when it's something that I didn't ask for, and to also see your work, that how you got there.
Another example of that is the animated Spider-Man movies with Gwen. Like they make her character so compelling that they probably could make a separate Gwen story and people would actually watch that because her characters become very likable and like an integral part of that Spider-Man universe with Miles Morales, where she could literally stand on her own, and I'd watch it and I wouldn't feel like Miles Morales' character is somehow being slighted because they built up her character to the point where she can literally stand on her own if they wanted her to, in terms of making her own story or movie. So that's another example. That's again going back to the Furiosa thing and what you're saying, Jason. Well, it's just a matter of you got to just make it build that structure a foundation really good, and then everything else will fall into place after that in terms of the ancillary characters or new characters you want to introduce. That's all you have to do, and just don't treat people like they're idiots. The fans, they can perceive stuff better than you give them credit for, and that's why there's always backlash to things when things like that happen, because the audience is not as dumb as they think they are. That's why there's that backlash. So anyways,
it's Jay back in for another one, and today I have with me
Joselito.
Captain Keith.
How's it going, fellas?
I'm good. I can't complain.
Right on.
Good. I'm glad to meet with you guys again to chat about another movie.
Yeah, man, it's been a long time coming. It's funny. Remember when we saw the first one and we discussed the first one, and it was all crazy because it's almost as if we didn't know for sure if we were going to get a part two. And I haven't in a long time seen a movie that definitely felt like it wasn't complete, even though it was, but it wasn't quite complete, and no discussion, no talk of a part two. That's the first time I ever kind of heard that, especially with something this big of scale, just being kind of cut short and not saying anything. Into the Spider-Verse, like the whole Miles Morales Spider-Verse thing, that could have been just one, but it left with a little but we already kind of knew it was going to be a part two, and then even the part two is split into 2 and 3. So I was thinking this is a big feat to make and very epic and definitely not the end. So how could it possibly end on this? And like I said, and for it not to be confirmed and months after we're still saying, hey, have you heard anything yet about part 2 being made? It hasn't been, they're still deciding, in the past, you could even make a movie like this without shooting all 3 parts. And all you would be doing is just be cutting it up later on and adding special effects and whatever and doing some catch-up shots. But for the most part, all 3 episodes would have been shot. And it's just he wasn't playing around for it to be a simple thing where, one was good enough. That would have been so half-baked where if it was a point where you wasn't for sure if you're going to put out part 2, you shouldn't have put out part 1. So I thought it was very interesting how that was played, and I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. It was interesting.
I wonder if they did that because I don't know if it's part of it is that they weren't sure like what the reaction, how big of a movie the first one was gonna be, as one reason why they kind of like kept it on the down low in terms of having a second one. They kept it. It was very ambiguous. You couldn't tell like what you knew. You had a feeling they would, but then it's like, are they like they?
Right.
It was the most under talked about thing like after the first movie, so maybe that's part of it, but then maybe it's also like I don't know if that's like a new tactic also where they try to keep to make things to keep people kind of confused and not sure to I don't know if that makes sense in terms of like making it more like kind of like where it becomes more of a cult, like whispered, like it's a rumor, so it raises up like more interest because you don't know that they're gonna have a second movie, so you become anxious as a fan, and then when they do finally release the trailers for a second movie, then it magnifies because you didn't know up to that point if there was going to be a second one.
Well, I think that could be a dangerous tactic because the people who don't know for sure and they're hearing like, hearing people talk about it and saying, hey, it's not really complete and it's not for sure a part two, people may not invest in it. People might be like, oh, it's incomplete. And the people who was halfway trying to see if they wanted to follow it's like, I'm not going to get into this.
Yeah, it's dangerous, especially because it's unlike like if it's a popular series like Star Wars, they could get away with that because Star Wars is so popular that they could like people are just Star Wars fans are just so hungry for anything that they'll lap it up. But then Dune is like such a, even in its heyday with the Lynch, like it doesn't really fall into like a mass popular type of movie. It's kind of was seen as a weird quirky movie. This one is kind of the same, where it doesn't have, I think, a big enough initial big enough audience base that that you could kind of risk doing that and not alienate, because let's be honest, if not for Lynch's movie, this one people would, except for me and like Keith and the people who read the books, they wouldn't have really cared, other than the fact that the director Denny was the one that was doing it, which he's kind of like Nolan, where he's so big that anything he does, he could do. If he did like a Care Bear movie, people would just for the fact that he's the one being the director, people would watch a Care Bear movie thinking it's going to be like really great.
And that's why I kind of understand some of the changes he made, because this is kind of on his back in a way. But like I said, it's interesting that they did a gamble like that. Like I said, I haven't really seen it done that way. Because I remember in the past where movies that we know did bad and the studios know they did bad, they did so bad that they were talking up part two just to make people have interest in seeing part one. So that's a tactic. So I never heard of it being the other way, because I heard of them lying about part two or part three when they know good and well it wasn't going to happen because the movie bombed so badly. But that's Warner Brothers and all the other kind of stuff. But I will say, I think a lot of the steam for the second one came from the fact that the first one was on Netflix and people got a chance to watch it and take their time with it. People who didn't, it's like, I seen the first one, I'm scared off of it, or didn't care for the first one, like, and they saw it on Netflix, they got a chance to sit with it. Then they saw it on HBO Max, they got a chance to sit with it. And then the fact that everything was pushed back because of the pandemic and the strike and all that kind of stuff, I think that just gave people time. And that's the same thing that happened with the Spider-Verse movies, where when it first came out, people wasn't really feeling it, but when they got a chance to see it on Netflix and sit with it and saw, man, this is a great movie, by the time the second one came out, everybody was on it. And so it benefited. And so this is one of those kind of times where the machine kind of getting stuck or jammed kind of benefited the viewer, the potential people who would like this thing, got a chance to sit and have time. Because a lot of times we move so fast, and sometimes you do need that space to really take in something or give it a second watch to see how you really feel about it. And so to have that breathing room, it really gives you time and a second chance to really connect to something. Because some stuff, you cannot get it in one viewing. Even if you love it, it's hard to take in, especially when it's this dense and there's so much stuff going on. It's a relationship and you really got to take your time with it. So the pandemic and the time and having it on streaming really gave people time to sit with it and really kind of connect. And like I said, I think that really contributed to the new one coming out and giving people time to, pretty much, get their palate for the taste ready for what was about to come.
Yeah, definitely. Streaming has done something with movies like Dune, where, unlike in the past, where from movie to eventually rental and eventually like some kind of like HBO, or it would take forever. So, but now with the way that with streaming, where within like a few months, you could literally prepay for the second Dune already now,
Right.
and then by probably within a month or two, it'll already be available for digital. I
Right.
mean, it definitely makes it where, because I once it went out to streaming, I watched it like a few times. The first one,
Me
the
too.
first Dune, it's like I could really like sit back and like really dissect it because I already know what happened. So I could literally see the details. And that's the same thing with the Spider-Verse. With the Spider-Verse, especially the second Spider-Verse movie, where the more I watched it like recently, like I'm liking it more
Me
and
too.
more
Me
the
too.
second and third, fourth time around when I watch it. And I really understand that the second one, and hopefully maybe that's another conversation we can have on the Spider-Verse movies.
For sure.
Like the second one, in my opinion, is really a masterpiece compared to the first. It's really good. Like I
Yeah.
didn't realize that when I first watched
Me
it. I
either.
liked it,
Right.
but it's only because of the what streaming did, and it allows me to keep watching it later on
Yeah.
multiple times, that I really understood they really did a good job in that Spider-Verse, the second Spider-Verse movie. People
Right.
don't, and it's a shame that they lost. I think they lost out in the Oscars to that The Boy and the Heron, which is a
Right.
decent film, but I think that Spider-Verse actually got robbed. They should have gotten the award for the Oscar. Anyways, that's
Agree.
jumping
Agree.
off topic, but yeah.
So it's funny listening back to our previous conversation on the first one. For those who haven't heard it, check out our first conversation on the first part of the Dune, which was I think was a great discussion from different perspectives, and we covered so much. But the main thing I got out of that conversation was the term you coined, Doonies. Since you coined that, I'm gonna let you start first. What was your overall thoughts on this new Dune Part 2? What was your overall thoughts of the new movie?
Did I coin that or did Keith coin that?
You did.
Oh, I did.
You said
Okay.
Dooney.
Was it? Did I say?
Yeah,
Okay. I
you
thought it was
coined that.
Dune Night. I thought
That
it
was all
was
you,
Dune
bro.
Night.
That was all
Okay,
you.
Dune
No,
Night.
Not
you-
Goonies,
you-
but Doonies.
Cause you were like, is it Dunai or Dooney? You were trying to figure it out, but you ended up having different terms, but we ended up with
Doonies.
Dooney.
Wow.
Yeah, so as the official coiner of the word Doonies. So what was your thoughts on the new movie?
Okay, so I definitely like the second one more than I like the first one. When I went to watch the second one versus what I did in the first one, is I really tried to separate. I said, okay, I'm not gonna like think about Lynch's movie at all. Like I'm not gonna try to. I'm gonna say it's apples and oranges. I'm not gonna try to in any way compare it to Lynch's version. And as much as possible, I'm gonna see if this second one. When I went into it, I was thinking that it had to go by by Herbert's book, like word for word.
Mhm.
But I wanted to at least see if this movie at least got like some of the important themes that Herbert was trying to say in his series.
Yeah.
And for the most part, it nailed like a lot of what I thought the themes that Herbert was trying to say in his book. So I really liked the second one, and a lot of when the trailers were coming out.
Mhm.
And when the first reviewers were like talking about it, they were like making the comparisons that it was kind of like Empire Strikes Back, in the same way that Empire Strikes Back was the better movie versus Star Wars. That's kind of the way I also viewed it too, where the second one definitely is the better movie. And it's not just the better movie, it's like monumentally a lot better than the first movie. Almost to the point where I almost felt like the first movie, you almost thought that it was not the same director, but it was. But that's how good the second movie was. I felt like the second movie was more open, and it wasn't like the first movie. I felt like Denny was like somehow hampered. I don't know why, because of whatever limitations. He didn't want to give too much in the first movie, but he wanted to give a story, but he didn't want to give too much away. So it kind of took away from the first movie. But the second movie, it's almost like, okay, now it's wide open. I can say whatever I want to say, and then you see that on the film in the second one. So yeah, I definitely like the second Dune a lot more than the first one, and I guess I could say I'm an official Dooney now from the
'Cause-
second movie.
yeah, 'cause I remember you didn't necessarily care for the first one. Like you didn't hate it or nothing, but you didn't really care for it. So
Yeah,
that's good to
yeah,
hear.
I didn't. I said that it's worth watching. The
Yeah.
first one is good, where it's worth watching. But if you were a fan of Herbert or even Lynch, then there's gonna be problematic things about it. But it's still, I wouldn't tell people not to watch it. It's a good movie. The first one is on its own. It's a good movie.
So Captain Keith, what says you?
I liked it more than the first one,
Okay.
but it had more action. It was easier to watch. Certain characters stood out more. They were more likable, but it was still problematic for me.
Okay.
It wasn't necessarily the same problems that I had with the first one. So there were different problems, like the liberties they took with the book, or the deviations from the book that they overtly and blatantly did. I didn't care for at all. As I said before, Denis Villeneuve's cinematography is great. I mean, it's visually stunning. It is. The way he made it looks great. That was never a complaint of mine. And even the direction, I don't have a problem with his direction. There were just things I just didn't care for.
Okay.
But yeah, I liked him more than the first one, but I still, I would still refer people back to Lynch's Lynch's version. And I would actually, the sci-fi miniseries sticks closer to the book. It just doesn't look as good.
Mm-hmm.
So and it was always the irony that if you could have combined the miniseries with Lynch's movie, it would have been like perfect. Mm-hmm. Because Lynch gave you the look and the feel and the style and the story. He gave it. His movie grabs you. I mean, and it's even to this day when I read those books, or whenever or when I'm seeing a new, version of Dune, I still go back to his film. Kyle MacLachlan is still my Paul Atreides. That's just not going to change. And Sting is still my fade. So, but yeah, there were certain characters that you saw more of, but I didn't like how he portrayed them at all. So yeah, it was still problematic for me. So yeah, I'm not recommending it. I'm not. I think it's better than the first, but yeah, it's still problematic. I still go back to Lynch. Period.
That's fair. That's fair. All right, so I like the movie. I won't say necessarily I liked it better than the first one. I kind of like slow burn movies, so I don't mind, because a lot of world building and get to know the characters and stuff, and seeing how people actions kind of dictate places and positioning and things like that, like almost like watching a chess match. So I like that about the first one. I like in this one too, being on a roller coaster ride where you go through, you kind of go through the motions. There's no real action, anything really happening. You just kind of slowly inclining, just going slowly up and up and up and up. And you're moving in a way where by the time you get to the top, you don't realize you were that high up because of the way you got there. And so when you hit the peak and then you descend, and it's just fast and furious, and just you're hitting these corners real fast. That's what this movie was. So if the first one was the build up, this one was kind of like, hang on tight. This is when everything's kind of happening. To me, it's less detailing and less kind of insight in a way. It's insight, but it's in a different kind of way. The first one did most of the heavy lifting. And then for those like in movies that we see nowadays, like in theaters and stuff, this is the meat that people usually start with in movies. This is what the kind of movies people would go into in the first place. They wouldn't want to hear the talking and the negotiating and the slow world building. They want the fast pace. They want the action. They want the cool gadgets. They want the, the kick-ass leader who's, pushing forward and this, that, and the betrayal and the big bad guy. You want that meet up with your enemy. You want the eye-to-eye combat and how this is going to be dealt with kind of thing. And so it has all that kind of stuff in it. For me, it was almost so fast-paced that I almost didn't really appreciate it for what it was until I saw it a second time. And then I saw, okay, they did have other stuff in here and there was some nuances going on here, but it was just, the pace was just so much faster than the first one. And so when you said that it almost felt like it was a different director, I hear you as far as like it was definitely a different speed, but it also had a different job. And then there's also something about like not knowing what the future of something's going to be and how much to give, how much not to give, because if you give too much it could be confusion. If you don't give enough, it's going to stalemate it, because it's like you give me half the information. So it is a fine line, and the whole story in the first place is a hard it's a hard thing to navigate to make into a movie, because really a streamlined version of this would be the Star Wars, and that's already been done. So for you trying to do something here, more meat, and still streamline it again, but not streamline it the way somebody who copies you streamlined it, you got to find that third rail. And it's like, how do I stay true, but give you what I know is going to work, but then not give you what somebody else did where it worked really good. And so navigating that, it's almost got to be a whole new car to fit on this new track, and kind of doing that fine line of, like I said, what's popular and done by someone else already in a great way, and something that was done where, you know, people maybe not messing with it because it's a little too much. And unless you just really into that kind of world and open to that kind of stuff, you ain't trying to hear it. It's like, it's just too much. And so I think this movie did it well. I thought that that it left on a good beat, making me want another one. And I take it as not necessarily a comparison to the first one, but just the same ride, different part of the ride. But I did enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Saying that, I guess we could get into the spoilers, or things that stood out that you liked, or stood out that just kind of wasn't sitting with you. We could discuss that part here. But for the most part, Joselito still recommended it. I would recommend it, and Captain Keith would pass on it. He wouldn't necessarily recommend it.
Nope.
Okay, and that's fair. Okay. All right, so let's get into spoiler discussions. Who would like to start with their thoughts? Like I said, something that stood out, or even just going down the line of what the movie did, because it pretty much started off where the last one left off, which I thought was kind of interesting. So it was a direct continuation, no time jump or anything. It was just like, this is the situation. He met the Fremen. He's on the road with them. They're suspicious of him. Some of them are. Some of them could possibly see a Messiah amongst them as prophesied. So it's a lot of stuff going.
I was excited initially for the second movie because I'm a big Florence Pugh fan, and also I love Christopher Walken. But oddly enough, the way that the movie, that this is one of the like negative things about the movie, or things that I didn't necessarily like about the second Dune, was I didn't necessarily like the way that Pugh's character, and especially Christopher Walken's character, were done. Christopher, like, there was something about Christopher Walken's character that, as an emperor, that was so weak. Like, there wasn't, and again, I don't want to keep going back to Lynch's version, but this is a character that's supposed to have plotted the downfall of the Atreides family, and the way Christopher Walken portrays him is, he seems so indecisive and very weak. That's didn't make sense to me. And the Florence Pugh character, like, while she gave exposition to the other side of the story that we didn't get the first one, there wasn't anything compelling enough about the way she portrayed her character, where at the very end, when Chani is pissed off that Paul basically is gonna marry the Emperor's daughter,
Princess
Florence Pugh's
Irulan.
character, there wasn't anything about the way Florence Pugh's character acted, where from Chani's perspective, that she shouldn't have been so like the jealousy thing. Like, that's part of the thing. And I don't want to keep going back to the Lynch movies, but in the Lynch movie, I think it's what's that actress that plays the Emperor's daughter?
Virginia Madsen.
Virginia Madsen. Oh my God, she's like so gorgeous.
Yes.
So, and even in Herbert's book, the Emperor's daughter is, beyond just being the Emperor's daughter. Like, she is attractive, and they're like, she would be someone where someone like Chani would be rightfully jealous. Like, are you gonna just hook up with her? Aside from her title, it's also because she's attractive, and I'm gonna lose you. nothing about the Pugh's character says anything to me where Chani would ever feel threatened that she would take Paul away from her, because both the Emperor's daughter and the Emperor come off as very weak in the second Dune. That's one of the weaker parts of that movie for me.
Okay.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I think Florence Pugh is amazing. And I didn't care for her performance either. I didn't care for her look. I didn't like her with the short hair. I felt like all the women in the film were overly unglamorized. I think they did too much with that. I did not care for Rebecca Ferguson as Lady Jessica at all. This is the one performance that she's done I did not care for. I did not like her interpretation of it at all. Nothing about her said Lady Jessica. Nothing about her said sensual, strong, beautiful woman who fell in love with Leto Atreides. There was no chemistry. It's just nothing. If anything, she became more of a Harkonnen. You know, and we know the irony in that, but I did not care for her at all in that. And Princess Irulan, Florence Pugh, nothing about her said beautiful princess who is a Bene Gesserit trained woman who's going to marry Paul.
I think how they messed up on Princess Irulan is Florence Pugh is attractive as an actress.
She wasn't in that
Why is she
film.
wearing this weird like chainmail? Like she's, you know, like
why is her hair cut so short?
I don't
Princess Irulan
understand.
didn't look like that.
What they should have done is they should have that's the contrast where Chani is literally like a women who are like, they don't put makeup. There's no fancy dresses that the women wear. It's very somber and it's very practical. They could have made Pugh where she's dressed so elegantly, where that would be a threat to Chani because she would think that she epitomizes more of like a feminine thing that Paul as a man would be like and be attracted to. But they dumb, well, I don't know if that's the right word, dumb down. How would you make, it's like
They
dumbing
dulled down her
down, but in
looks.
terms of the looks,
All the women.
yeah,
They dulled the women's looks down. Zendaya
they-
still looks good, but her looks were dumbed down too, or dulled down too. It just because they're on this desert. When you watch, see, I have no problem going back to the Lynch movie, because without the Lynch movie, I wouldn't even be here talking about Dune at all. Period. That movie changed my life. I read all those books after watching that one film. You know, as a teenager, I never did that before. So, and he's one of my favorite directors anyway. But putting that to the side, getting back to the story. I mean, where do I start? I mean, so Dave Bautista plays the Beast Raban, temperamental, bully, coward. Nothing about him said ferocity. Nothing about him said a menace. His portrayal was horrible. So when you talk about Christopher Walken as the Emperor, and I love Christopher Walken, you wasted his performance. I blame Denis Villeneuve for that, his direction on him, because he was useless. He was weak. There was nothing there. Nothing there. And like I said, getting back to Florence Pugh, especially after seeing her, Black Widow, just seeing her in the Marvel stuff, seeing how amazing of an actress she is, she's definitely dulled down. You know, like I said, people forget she's a Bene Gesserit as well. She was trained by the Bene Gesserit. She's beautiful and she's trained for a purpose. You know, I mean, to be princess, to be co-ruler of the universe. You don't get any of that from that. You don't. And then when I think about the Harkonnens, and I still can't stand how they call them Harkonnens. Oh, that gets on my nerves. They look like Borg. What the hell was that? They look like Borg.
What did it look like in the book? How are they described in the
They
book?
look like regular people with just red hair. Just red-haired evil people. That's it.
Regular red evil people. Okay, that's kind of general.
Yeah, but I mean, they're Irish. I mean, they have red hair. But I mean, they look like a noble house. They don't look like these evil aliens trying to assimilate the whole universe. I mean, they don't look like that. Now, Austin Butler, his performance was good, but I didn't care for the look at all. I didn't care for the look of Giddy Prime. It was too over the top. It's like, this is a great house. There's a reason why they were on Arrakis. There's a reason why the Emperor liked them. Yes, they're evil. Yes, they're corrupt, but way too over the top with that. There's nothing about Giddy Prime, nothing. And then even Skarsgård, I forget his name, Stellan, the dad,
Yes.
played the Baron. Great actor, wasted as the Baron. Not enough time, not enough seeing him fleshed out. And then there's this iconic moment where Paul reveals something that his mother already knew about who the Baron is to them. And for me, it was wasted when you got to that moment. He revealed the moment, but how they got rid of the Baron, not in the book, not in any of the movies. Now, a friend of mine I was talking to last night, he's new to Dune. He watched the first movie that Denis Villeneuve did, and then recently he watched David Lynch's version, and then he went and saw part 2. And so he loves Lynch's version. And he's appreciating all of it. Now, he said to me, I have to give it to him, because I told him, I complained about how I felt like the iconic moment where Paul says to his mother, you are the Baron's daughter, we're Harkonnens. And she's like, well, yeah, once I took the water of life, I already knew that. But when Denise showed you that scene and he showed the Baron looking at the daughter, that was something new. That was cool. But when he goes and he kills the Baron and says, grandfather, okay, you did that. That's not how it went in the book. You did that. But for me, there should have been more to that moment. Now, my friend said for him it was, because he hadn't read the books. So for him, that was the same aha moment that you got in Empire Strikes Back, Luke, I'm your father. I'll never forget that scene with Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker. And that's the one complaint I had with Lynch's film. So Denis, he gave that to me, but I didn't like the feeling. It felt flat on me when I was watching it. It felt flat. But like I said, my friend, for him, it didn't. So maybe that's just me on that. But there were just so many different things. I liked Javier Bardem as Stilgar. He was fun. He was likable. I liked that. I didn't like the fact that Jameis came back to Paul, as someone helping his, a spiritual advisor. You killed the black man in the first one, but it's okay now because we're going to put his water in here with the sacred people, and now he's going to guide you. No, man, get the fuck out of here with that. That goes back to why I hated the first one. Zendaya, I liked her as Chani. It's surprising. I liked her more in this as Chani. I could feel her conflict. And like you said too, Jay, about how there were some women there looking at him sideways, and that was cool. But it just seems like she's in love with him, but she don't trust him. She don't know how to feel. So, and that's a different way of playing it, because it's not really like that, like in the book. So that was interesting. But yeah, and then even with the sandworms, how you're at the airport and you're walking to your gate and you got that moving escalator thing, the moving floor. That's what I felt I was looking at when they were writing the sandworms. Nothing about that to me was great. Getting to the part, the conversation Stilgar had with him, don't make me look bad. All that leading up to him getting on the sandworm, that was cool and fun. And the Fremen teasing him, all that, and their language, that was cool. But with them riding the sandworms, I was just like, really? I don't even see it's like you're just moonwalking across the desert right now.
Sorry, I wanted to bring this up because you brought up Jameis, Keith, to Jason, because Jason, I don't know, you haven't read the books, or did you watch the Lynch version?
Yeah, and I've seen it again recently. I seen it when it first came out, didn't necessarily care for it, but I seen it again recently. Okay. And being that I saw the new movies, it made that movie make more sense to me.
Yeah, because in the Jameis character, also in the book, the Denis version doesn't talk about at all, is that Jameis has a wife and 2 kids, 2 boys. And when Paul kills him, he basically becomes the head of that household. And that's something that they don't bring up at all with the Denis. So, Keith, when you bring up, like, it didn't make sense that, Jameis was kind of like a spiritual advisor to him. The fact that Denis didn't have, a wife and the kids that basically now fall under Paul's, authority, that actually didn't make sense that he was coming back to advise them. Because isn't it the first movie, were they ever like like buddy. They were never like
No,
like
they were never friends.
So
No,
it doesn't make sense
no,
that he's coming back to him like
no,
kind of like the
no,
like the Jedi spirit or something. It didn't make
no.
sense that in the second movie, like what now if you have something where Paul, like in the book, now becomes the guardian of the wife and the two kids, that would kind of make sense where Jamis would you know, for the sake of his family, would be kind of advising Paul because it's in his best interest to make sure that, you know, Paul is able to survive because he's going to be the one taking care of his family. I mean, that I'm just adding that for context because I wasn't sure if you knew about that detail. That's
Yeah,
a
I
very
forgot about
important
that.
detail,
No.
actually. So
No,
that
Well, no,
Danny doesn't
but
cover.
put like this, it wasn't anything to make me think about it, so it wasn't like I felt it was missing, which I would prefer than to have something there and I'm kind of like, what does that mean? So it didn't come up about his family or anything like that. As far as like Christopher Walken's, my only issue with him is that he's just very well known, almost too well known for me to have him in there. The princess, she was fine. It's interesting, like, you know, in the original movie, you know, she kind of starts off the movie with her, you know, doing dictation of what was going on. So it's interesting that they put that in this one. It started this one almost in the same way as the original movie did, with her kind of doing an accounting of what's going on. Christopher Walken's the Emperor, I didn't really trip off of it because it kind of made sense when the thing came up about him kind of being, I don't know if I would say jealous, but he didn't care for Paul's father and how he was doing things. And so it always kind of make me kind of think, when I think of a ruler or somebody like that, it's not necessarily the strongest person. It's the person who got away with the most dirt and got a chance to be on top. So they're never really looking for challenges. You know what I mean? And so I almost tie this into like real life and politicians and stuff like that, where the big guy who you think would be the, you know, that would lead the charge is usually not the leader. It's somebody else who's dictating what's going on. And then also with the Bene Gesserits, and you kind of know, like, they kind of playing chess with these pieces that, yeah, the truth is they're running the whole thing. So regardless of who's there, what faces they are, they're playing on both sides. They're playing the black and the white. They're playing both sides. They're making up the whole mythology. They're making the whole thing up and then doing things to make sure everything falls into that path. So, you know, guys being manipulated by the women, that's kind of the theme of this that I'm getting, at least that I'm seeing in the movie so far. So I don't take it as, you know, now in Lynch's film, I never saw or felt that from seeing it. I never saw that they were like people that was kind of like not down with what he was doing. It's almost like he had this, maybe for his privileged life, kind of hard, his rise and becoming this messiah, but I didn't feel that in the original movie. It seemed like he just was kind of like doing his thing. This one, it kind of shows all the trappings and what's kind of helping him flow forward and what's trying to stop him. So it's all these little nuances of how a messiah is built. Even questioning, could he even be a messiah? And the fact that people reading the room are like, this doesn't feel right, or this isn't right. I love seeing that because it's kind of like, because I know you said the thing about the white savior thing, because they show like the brown people as a Fremen and stuff like that. But even the original movie is that too. That this is a character who is a white savior coming to be the leader of indigenous people. So in the movie,
but it's not overt. It's not overt.
But still, it's the same.
It's more overt.
Overt or not. But like this, that whole theme that I think is very important. It was lost on me seeing the original film because everybody looked the same. So I never thought of it like, oh, he's coming to America and he's, you know, killing off the Indians and he's supposed to be a messiah for the Indians. So I didn't notice that in the first movie, but seeing this, it's like, yeah, who is this white dude coming through here? Or not even white. This alien coming down and saying that he is going to be like, we are not going to save ourselves. This guy is going to come in, be it green, purple, whatever. Some alien from a different place Superman is going to be our savior, not us. We're Lex Luthor being like, this is the problem. Some people are happy, but I don't like it. I don't want to have my destiny with this situation. So seeing it broken up with different races, different colored people, I didn't notice it in the first one, but seeing with this is like, okay, yeah, that would be a problem. And I'm glad people are saying stuff about it. And it's just funny how how, like I said, it was interesting because the whole time he's reluctant. Paul's reluctant, and his mom is pushing forward, and the Bene Gesserits, they're pushing forward, and everybody's kind of moving, but just to see how it seemed like more like Destiny in the original movie. This one seemed like it was plotted, and even though it takes some of the mystery out for it being so plotted, it also kind of just, if you like politics and you like chess, this movie kind of plays more like a chess game, and you're just seeing like, man. And also the fact of how things come into power. And if you're on one side, if you hear certain kind of things, then yes, you grow up religious, you're going to feel like, you know, Jesus is going to come down and save you. And so the people who believe what was told is going to be more acceptable to these certain pushes or certain things kind of happening. You can be played on your feelings about this thing. And if you don't, yeah, you'd be kind of skeptical, like an atheist, and like, well, I don't put my hope on somebody coming. Like Zendaya's character, she was kind of like, we're not waiting, you know, they give us this religion, they give us this Messiah, Chani, like, you know, we're waiting for this guy to come down, and we got to save ourselves. We got to save ourselves. And so seeing that, how it's broken down, and like I said, the witches are running everything. They're choosing who's born, who's what they have, and how it's all tied up. So really, like I said, I didn't need to necessarily see the emperor being a certain kind of way because he wasn't running stuff anyway. This is almost kind of like, this is the perspective of the truth of what's going on versus like the other side of it, where it would just be this smooth thing like, yeah, these pieces are locking in because it was destined. We see the side where people see where it's destined and how it just falls into place. And we also see the side where they're laying track. We're going here and we're going to tell these people this place and we're going to go this side. And we give them all these different kind of possibilities so we can make sure our piece makes it across the line. And to do dual of storytelling, to give both sides and you watch it at the same time, is brilliant. And I didn't get that from the first one. So I thought it was kind of interesting to see that being played.
But what you're missing though, Jay, and why you do need to see more of the Emperor is because the reason why the Emperor does this to the Atreides family is because he's jealous of Leto Atreides.
That was said. That was said. I knew that. That was said.
Okay. Well,
he didn't like how that he felt that he was moving and ruling by a heart, and he needed to be, I guess, a tougher breed of leader to make sure it happens.
But he was also afraid of being replaced by Leto Atreides because everyone loved Duke Leto because he was Leto the Just, and because Duke Leto has a son, and the Emperor has nothing but daughters because the Bene Gesserit made sure of that. Because what they don't tell you, and it's in the prequel books in House Corno, Dune House Corno, basically Shaddam the Fourth was so ruthless, he basically killed one of his brothers so he become emperor. He wanted to be emperor at all costs. And because of that, he was so smart, he was stupid. When he became emperor, he was supposed to choose someone from one of from the Lantarod, one of the noble houses to marry, to solidify, the throne. The Bene Gesserit came to him and said, well, why don't you choose her? She's a Bene Gesserit, and this way you don't have to pick one of the houses. You could be neutral with that and just have her as your concubine or your wife. So he's like, okay, I'll do that. And they told her, have nothing but daughters for him. So that's also at play with this backstory. Now, what they don't also tell you is that you're right, the Bene Gesserit, they're pulling all the strings, they're manipulating the houses, for the Quasix Haderach. But when you see Lynch's version, you understand that love is what changed this whole story. The great love between Lady Jessica and Duke Leto is what changed this whole story when she decided to give him a son instead of a daughter. But you don't get that in Denis' new version. You don't get that with Rebecca Ferguson. There's nothing about her that says, this is a great woman that I loved and I should have married her.
Okay,
like I said, I hated her portrayal.
But that was said, and that's how I knew that I gave, because the mother got on her about having a son in the first place, and she said, you gave that man a son. So the stuff you're saying,
she said that, but I'm talking about the feeling. Yeah, she said all that, but like I said, Rebecca Ferguson was not convincing.
No. That's fine for you. I'm telling you how I felt about it. I'm telling you what I got from it. And so you're repeating what I'm just said, but without me even knowing the stuff that you knew. So I'm not knowing that by magic. I'm telling you what I got from watching it. So I don't know the part where I was missing that I didn't understand that, like I said, the kids were being lined up and that they had other messiahs that could possibly take the place. And if he was going to be a boy, well, the Harkonnens have a person who's going to could be a possible messiah. Can we use him possibly? Can we control him? Let's test and find out. Let's even give him a kid. So I'm watching the movie and I'm seeing this. So I hear what you're saying, but I'm saying these things are still happening within this movie that I'm seeing that, like I said, gave me a different respect for the Bene Gesserits, because they would have seemed very kind of unassuming, and I didn't understand the levels of them until the second movie kind of dug in really how much was really going in, because and I think that's kind of powerful, because most things that are unassuming is the things that you need to look out for. So it kind of played like that for me, like I said, from the first movie to the second movie, and then to see that the Emperor's daughter was one of them too. So they kind of have their hands in all these houses, and everybody's playing against the house, but they are the house, and they have, like I said, they got either they're controlling people, they're swaying people, they're kind of bonding through sex and stuff with people, having their kids and making them have the kids they didn't want to so they can stack their decks. And it's just like it's
but it blew up in their...
It's funny how in society how things changed, where now if people kind of question women and not being strong, right, and they thinking that they gotta be strong like men, the same way we do, like beat stuff over the head or strong arm stuff, or have ego and move forward without hearing directions. The Bene Gesserit is a perfect instruction for women how feminine energy could be used to control everything without breaking a sweat, without lifting a rock, without hitting somebody over the head, and they can still rule the world. It's very interesting. It's very interesting how they are femininity rules everything. And so it's funny, and this would be an old school thing to show this, but nowadays it's so backwards, thinking that a woman got to outman a man, when the true power is getting the man to do what they want to in all these different kind of ways, because all the ways that it can be used in real life, they're doing it in these movies, and it's very interesting to see. And it's a good lesson, do what you want, but I'm just saying, the way the women are moving in here is like classic feminine power.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that the Lynch movie, and it's in the book too. That's the whole thing that the Denny's version doesn't really talk about, that Lynch talks about, where in Lynch's version, when Paul does the box test,
the Gum Jabbar,
Gum Jabbar, before he does it, the Bene Gesserit, is it
Reverend Mother Helen Gaius Mohim,
tells him that there's an aspect of like they can't, like the Bene Gesserit can't look at a certain spectrum, like they can only see the feminine side, but when it comes to the masculine side, that's the one thing that they can't, and they're afraid of going. And that's the duality that Herbert's book talks about, the feminine versus the masculine, that I kind of wish that Denny he didn't really go over that.
No.
But Jason, it's interesting you bring up the whole thing, feminine power. That's one of the aspects that, are not really talked about. That's something in society where they say one of the ways that you could be it like a tyranny towards like women is like you control the reproductive rights. That's a superpower. Yes, women still would need a man to become pregnant, but the fact that a woman can literally bear a life inside of her, that's like a very powerful thing.
Yes.
That the book kind of talks about, and the why there is that power in the feminine side, and that the Bene Gesserit behind the scenes, the control that they're doing, they control genetic bloodlines. That's basically what they're doing, and that just shows that, like what you're saying, they don't have to have the masculine traits of being overtly violent, hitting you over the head. They just go behind the scenes. They do a lot of like ninja stuff.
Right.
But there's stuff that they've been able to like manipulate all these things behind the scenes. They basically control the entire religion of the Fremen for like hundreds of years because of the prophecies that they put on that planet.
Right.
And so that's one of the interesting things. And one of the things I want to go back real quick is that when they revealed that Jessica is the daughter of Baron, I didn't like the way that I understand for the sake of time that having that 5-second scene where Baron sees his daughter, who's Jessica. In the original prequel books, the Baron never knows that she's the daughter. I'll go back to Keith's point about the Harkonnen. I definitely like the way they showed Fade in terms of like this just psychotic character, but there's something about him, despite his psychoticness, where I could see there's an appeal to him, even though he's like a crazy person. But one of the things that I didn't like about the way the Harkonnens were portrayed, where they do the whole board thing, where it's like black and white, and everybody looks like they're just like they didn't look human anymore. And even the planet itself, everything is monotone. Even the fireworks when they're celebrating, basically
wasn't it the sun or something, or eclipse or something going on that they did that for, right? And so that's why the light was weird, right?
I thought, well, the fact that they were like, it's almost devoid of color. It was trying to say that somehow they're not like regular humans. Like they're humans, but that they lack like some kind of like. It was a deliberate thing where to say, okay, this is the bad guys. We already know that they're bad guys, but they also
over the top.
They went over the top, and I wish they didn't do that.
But for him to kind of be there, kind of introducing what he's going to mean to the people, I didn't mind that scene. I thought that was kind of powerful, and then also the fact that they, the people he was fighting was drugged, and he was like, "Hey, I'm not going to be drugged." So it kind of, to me, gave him a little more credit as far as like. He's not just going for the glory. He's just not posturing. He wants that kind of heat. Unlike the Beast, like he saw danger coming, he ran the other way. Like he's ready to fight when he could win, So we kind of saw what the Beast was about versus him, where he wants a fair match. He's not scared. He respects a fair battle. He doesn't mind. He's giving people credit after he kills them. Like, you gave me a good fight. Like, good fight, Freeman. Like he gives credit where credit is due. It's no, like, I have no ego about it, but I'm the best and I'm nuts and I'm going to go for mine. And so...
and the one, I'll say the interesting thing about the Fade character in this movie, and I think it solidifies what I think about why the Bene Gesserit wanted a pairing of the Harkonnen and Atreides, where I was saying that the Harkonnen represents like intelligence, strategy, and ruthlessness to get the job done, and the Atreides are the charismatic side. And you could even see that in the fight with Fade and Atreides, where Fade looked like he was gonna win that fight.
Yeah.
Right. And even during the movie, that you could see that there's nothing about Paul in this movie other than the fact that he does, he goes on some of the raids and he helps save Chani, but he doesn't show anything in terms of where he's like a strategist and a leader. Immediately when Fade gets the leadership of Arrakis, he immediately like is able to like allow them to start mining the spice again without worrying about and like I said, when he almost beats Paul, he's clearly like a better fighter than Paul, and Paul is just he wins because of the what I call the trope of the good guy succeeding, where like they somehow come off, and Fade should have won that fight. And I know for the sake of the story, of course, he's not going to win the fight, but the way that they made that up to that point, I felt disappointed. I didn't want Paul to get killed, but they did it in such a way where Paul didn't really win. Like it solidified the point to me that I started saying, okay, then Jessica screwed up, because if the Bene Gesserit had their way, the leader for the Kwisatz Haderach would have been a better one than the way Paul is, in terms of, because Paul is lacking that part of the he's Harkonnen, but he's mostly Atreides in his traits and the way he acts, and the whole thing with the Emperor saying that he didn't like Duke Leto because he led with his heart and he didn't lead with like a ruthlessness that you needed in order to be a good leader. And that's also, I think, what Paul and I am curious if they do this in the third movie, where it'll show that why he's, as much as they say he's the Kwisatz Haderach, there's things that he lacks that makes him, he's not the ideal, he's actually not the Kwisatz Haderach. And if it goes off the books, Paul Atreides is not the true Kwisatz Haderach.
I wouldn't think anybody would be necessarily anyway, because they made the whole thing up. Like I said, they made the race and they put the pieces and laid the track for their own person to kind of win.
The whole thing, and I think, did they talk about this in the first movie where the Bene Gesserit is telling Jessica that she was supposed to have a daughter?
Yes.
And the daughter was going to eventually be with the Fade.
They didn't say that part, but they said she's supposed to have a daughter, but then you come to find out on this movie that they were supposed to be paired together because Fade was going to be the other side of it.
That child would be the
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So my take, and the reason why I didn't like the way that the Harkonnens were done in this is, yes, they're bad guys. We get that. We already got that in the first movie. But the point of the matter is the reason why they're Kwisatz Haderach, what the Bene Gesserit wanted, is the Harkonnen and Atreides, is the Harkonnen has all the traits of ruthlessness and leadership, right?
And intelligence.
But the
Baron's intelligent, man.
Yes.
Just cruel.
But the Atreides have the charisma, right? So when you pair those two together, the Kwisatz Haderach will not only have the ruthlessness, and also they can control him for the Fremen, but he'll also have the charisma that will actually make the followers, because Fremen don't like Harkonnen. If you have someone that has the ruthlessness of the Harkonnens, but the charisma of the Atreides, then that's your ultimate weapon. And that's what I was getting when I read the books, and also Lynch's version kind of hinted at that. And I wish that that's the one part that I wish that, I wanted, and they kind of made the Harkonnens like a little bit likable, in the sense that there's that scene when Fade is gonna get the governorship of Arrakis, right? And he's standing before the Baron.
Which doesn't happen in the book at all.
It doesn't have to, it's an interpretation.
But what he does is, there's a moment when he actually hisses. There's a sign of affection that the Fade does to the Baron, that in just that one moment, I didn't love the Harkonnens because of that, but I started seeing them as, they're not just the bad guys, they're throwaway bad guys where there's no depth beyond them being evil. But that sign of affection, because you rarely see that in movies where it's a clear-cut bad guy, like irredeemable bad guy, where they would show like a sign of affection that makes them deeper than the trope of, I'm just an evil bad guy, there's nothing likable. But just him doing that, it kind of makes them more, because I wanted the Harkonnens to be more complex, where I don't even want to say, if you want to say good or bad, it's a perspective of because you could argue that the Atreides are also are no better than the Harkonnens, because they're also using the Fremen, and in fact you could even argue that the Atreides are actually worse than the Harkonnens, because the Harkonnens aren't coming in not hiding who they are. They're saying, this is who we are, this is what we're gonna do. Atreides are trying to come off as, we're your friends, but then we're manipulating you into thinking that, if you side with us, then we're gonna save you from the evils of the Harkonnens and the rest of the universe. When in fact they're actually doing the same thing that any other house would do, and just exploiting.
So the thing you were saying about them, wanting for her to have a daughter, so so they could kind of have the ultimate messiah. When you find out that the Baron is her father, you find out that Lady Jessica basically skipped the line and made that combination of the two.
Yes.
Without them controlling, and that's why the problem was they already
that's
made
the beauty of it.
They already made him, so it's like you kind of threw us off, and then you made on top of that, and that's why it's kind of working for him, unfortunately for them. But I was going to speak to the point where you kind of brought up again, which is a good point, and which I was thinking about. I watched it as well, is how the Harkonnens and the are like they're the same. Yeah, they're kind of like the same, and they're on the same track. And it's funny because, and that's why the Furmans, like, you know, half of them are kind of like, we don't believe you, we don't trust it, because, and the thing is, Paul knows the outcome. He knows he's bringing death to them, right? And he's reluctantly, you know, his humanity is stopping him, being like, you know, I don't want to match up with this leadership stuff, because the more you think about it, I mean, you'll follow me and I'm gonna get you in trouble. And he don't want to tell him what kind of trouble it's going to be, but he knows. So they think he's being humble. He's knowing, because he's seeing that he's going to lead him into a dark situation. And so I thought that in this movie, it showed that well, versus the other movie. I didn't see it like that. I didn't see it as the fight for. It felt like he, even over his wanting to get revenge, he was still trying to do the right thing. And then he thought, like, maybe I could do both. Maybe I could kind of be this, you know, Messiah, and maybe I could kind of get revenge from my father and help them out too. But in his visions that he's seeing forward on, he's seeing the truth that's going to lead to death and everything. So it's just interesting to see him fighting, me actually understanding and seeing the way this is being shot and told, that he's fighting, and he's fighting it for a reason. He's not that he's afraid. Well, he's afraid, but he's not afraid like I can't do it. He's afraid that what it's going to mean. And that mixed in that pile of death and destruction is the woman of his dreams and the woman of his heart, you know, is going to be in that pile. And so it's funny how, if it wasn't for her or his connection to her, he wouldn't be trying to pull on the brakes on all this stuff. He would just be leaning in like his mom is. That's why his mom's so quick to be like, okay, we got to get them believers over there. We got to get them first because they already believe. And he's like, this stuff is not, you know, and she survived the poison because of this. Like, he's giving all the magic tricks out. So every time they try to be like, because she's the one, because he's the one, he's like, no, this trick is done because she could change poisons. And I can, you know, and so even the thing where he comes back and it's partly because of her tear, it almost makes you even wonder, would he would have just woke up anyway because he got another dose of the poison, or she knew how far along he would be out and knew he would wake up, and that's why she was pressing her to hurry up and put your tear in there because he's going to wake up in the next 5 minutes. It kind of deconstructs the whole ploy slash story slash, you know, the truth of the Messiah and all that kind of stuff. The religion, all that stuff is being played with. And like I said, it's just like, it's just making the whole thing of a Messiah very skeptical. And other stuff that you see with these kind of things, they usually don't play with that. They let you just believe that that's the Messiah and they're going to come and they're going to save you and make everything right. And you're going to be, and if you do happen to die, it's because you would have died for the reason, you know, for a good reason. And this kind of shows you, like, but like I said, behind the scenes. And I usually don't see things that kind of give you both sides of it, and how he was reluctant, because usually it's like, oh, because he's afraid or he doesn't know who he is. No, he know who he is. He just knows what it means, and we do too. And so to see it, like him putting on the brakes and why he's putting on the brakes is refreshing, to kind of show how, like I said, how a Messiah, a hero, a person in charge, a, you know, whatever, how that is not as magical or as, you know, happenstance as we think. It's a lot of behind the scenes measures that are happening. And also that the Messiah could be false. Like, it's hard to believe because that's what you've been groomed to believe, but it could very well be false and could lead you into a problem. And so it's almost like he's supposed to be a hero, but you're seeing that he's kind of not. But I'm just watching it to see where this is going to go. But it's not the normal path of a person who was a chosen one. It's almost like Neo almost got kind of questioned in the second movie when he came across the architect and kind of said he wasn't the only one.
Why am I here?
Your life is the sum of a remainder of an unbalanced equation inherent to the programming of the Matrix. You are the eventuality of an anomaly which, despite my sincerest efforts, I have been unable to eliminate from what is otherwise a harmony of mathematical precision. While it remains a burden assiduously avoided, it is not unexpected and thus not beyond a measure of control, which has led you inexorably here.
You haven't answered my question.
quite right. Interesting. That was quicker than the others.
Others? How many others? What? Answer my fucking.
The Matrix is older than you know. I prefer counting from the emergence of one integral anomaly to the emergence of the next, in which case this is the 6th version.
5 ones before me. There are only 2 possible explanations. There were 5 ones before me. Either no one told me, or no one knows.
Precisely.
And he is part of this thing that's going to reset this thing. Now, he made a couple of different kind of moves, but you are still that key that we made. Now, you have a little wiggle room of stuff, but you still are a pawn. As much magic you could do, and you're stopping stuff, and you're flying, and you got the best connection, Wi-Fi connection, and all the other people who's plugged in, you are still a pawn. And so this is kind of the same thing. Like, he's still not the good guy. Like, he still could lead them into death and could still be the thing that Chani was warning him about. Like, he's not the one. Like, this is not how it comes. And so her seeming like to be the outlier in a way, you know, her and her friends, it's a group of them, not just her. And to see the other side, like Sogard, to see him just so willingly pushing for it, like he's the Morpheus that's like, hey, you're the one, regard, I'm not the one, you're the one.
What was said was for you, and for you alone.
So it's the same kind of thing. So it's interesting to see like the other side of the Messiah. And I thought it was like really cool.
I wanted to add that in the movie kind of hints at it, but it doesn't go deep enough, where throughout the movie, until he takes the water of life, he's reluctant to be this Messiah. And then once he takes the water of life, all of a sudden it's like he's like his mom, where he's just driven to take this path of being the Messiah.
You felt they didn't show that?
No. What I'm saying is they didn't show that, yes, he's being the Messiah and going forward with it, and the fact that they're gonna basically do war against other houses is gonna lead to a lot of death. But what it doesn't show in the movie, because the book talks about, is once he sees these, it's like the Marvel Endgame when Doctor Strange sees all those multiple futures.
Right.
When Paul takes the water of life and he sees all these futures, just like Doctor Strange. Remember, Doctor Strange says, we can only win one way, and there's only one way we can win. In this way, all this stuff happens. You know, all these people will disappear, die. Thanos will supposedly win. Right. It's the same thing in Dune, where the only reason why Paul takes up the mantle after drinking the water of life and proceeds with, full go at being the Messiah is because the route that he takes, where there's going to be a lot of deaths because of the war, is actually going to be the least amount of death overall if he didn't become the Messiah.
But they did show the part where he said, I see all these ways, and he said,
but he doesn't say in the movie that me becoming the Messiah and going forward with this is going to be a lot of deaths, but it's actually the best way to get us past what's going to be even worse if I don't take this. That's what I think that
he doesn't go into detail about that. Okay, he goes into there's deaths, but I know what you're saying. He doesn't go into detail why he has.
But still, I took it as he's saying all these deaths and all these things that he saw. But he said there's a way. He did the hand gesture like this,
a narrow way,
we could get through it.
He does,
and not only that, before he was reluctant, that's when he started talking all this stuff and kind of rounding everybody up and talking about sending them to paradise and stuff. So you already knew he was down with going. Like, that was the path he saw, and after that, he was a whole other Paul. He was moving different. He was talking different, to the fact that his lady was looking at him sideways like, do I know you? Matter of fact, she stopped talking with him in a way because he started acting like that. So you saw that he saw a path, and he said we could needle through where we could, and he didn't say anything about it's going to be perfect or nothing like that, but he sees a way. So it was enough for him to feel comfortable with to move forward. And before he didn't even want to go talk to the ones in the South or anything like that, he was rounding up the people to the point where he was like, who gonna stand against me? And they rose to the occasion, and he kept talking mess, and he started preaching on them, and like, your mama this, your grandmama lost her eye in 2 days ago, and she was died, and she was 19, and everybody started bowing down. Who's with me? That's where that went.
Well,
no, I think they did a good job on that.
Well,
for me, I was kind of pumped on that part.
Yeah. Well, he wasn't, to be fair. So Timothy Chalamet did not convince me that he was Paul Atreides until that scene you're talking about.
Me too.
Yeah. So
when he accepted what he's going to do.
Yes. That also, to be fair to Denis Villeneuve, he did do something that Lynch didn't do. How Lynch ended the film making Paul the hero, I loved it. That's what got me into reading the books. What Denis did, now that I'm older and I reflect on the whole series, I look at Paul a little differently. So what Denis did by showing him as an anti-hero towards the end, that was different. And I do commend him on that. Because, and then like Chani looking like, who is this dude?
Right.
So I did like that. And maybe I'm thinking more about how I feel. Well, so I did like that because that was different and that was accurate, actually. In a sense that, Paul was reluctant, and now Paul sees everything. I mean, he's the hero for the story, but we'll see what happens next. Now,
unfortunately, he's a hero like his own story. Like that's the thing. It's always like whoever lives to tell the story, or if your side wins, that's who the hero is. Like, so regardless of what happens to everybody else, if he gets what he wants in his story, then he won. He's the hero. Just like the villain could be the hero in their own story. So,
Lex Luthor's the hero in his story. So.
Right. Something to mention that I thought was interesting, but I understand kind of why, is that the whole thing about his sister, right? Because I was thinking, like, because of the movie that I saw, the first one, I was thinking his sister should be walking around sometime, right?
And she's supposed to be.
Yeah, but they didn't do a time jump, so she was still pregnant. So it was no time jump, so she couldn't have had the baby already. So the way they handled it, I thought was pretty cool. For me, because I thought that, like, the whole thing when they realized, oh, we gave her that and she's with child. I think we messed up. And I like the acknowledgement of it. Like, even when the one was about to die, she's like, I think we done effed up now. And so I thought the fact that she was talking to the mom, because it also almost speaks to the whole conversation with mothers being in connection with the babies within them and stuff like that. So all that kind of stuff, I didn't mind. Because to be honest, in the original movie, it did throw me off when this little baby comes up and just starts stabbing people. It threw me off, right? Just because.
It was cool, but
I'm just kind of like, wait, what? Where did she come from? And then because she just kind of comes out of nowhere, she got her whole little garb. I'm like, they had time to make you a little outfit and stuff, so it was fine, right? And even though that was kind of creepy, I think that this almost made more sense to do it this way, because a lot of stuff like the weird deformed figures that does the space travel stuff, all that stuff.
Navigators.
So all that stuff, he's deliberately not touching with stuff because, like I said, I think he's doing that fine thread between what it should be and Star Wars, because he knows if he crosses this line, he possibly could just, lose the whole thing. And so some of the stuff that he changed, I thought, okay, he's not explaining time travel. He's just saying spice is involved. So that's fine for me. But I knew in other movies, these weird creatures that was kind of like, And then with this little, the Omen child walking around and just kind of, getting people, I thought it was kind of better that she wasn't around, because it almost would have been, it's how, in the world that he built, how far can this bend without losing it? Now, would it be right to have her around and doing that? Yes, but also it could be done in a way where, since Paul is dealing with the situation, he should be the one that kind of finishes it up and cleans it up too. It's almost like when I don't like when other characters come in last minute and this is your bad guy and you're supposed to be fighting the Joker, and then Superman comes out and take out the Joker. Like, wait a minute, that was Batman's job. That's his villain. Let him take out his own situation. Let him clean his own house. So I didn't mind so much when Paul, did that to his grandfather versus his sister coming out of nowhere, talking beyond her age. And I understand why, because she was infused with it. And I thought that was beautiful how they showed her eyes glowing in the womb and all that kind of stuff. I thought that was neat, and I understood. For diehards who wanted it, see her walking around, I understand that, but I also understood why you would kind of negate that kind of thing without bringing too much in that you have to explain and how that kind of tumbles and hit other things as well.
So let me ask you a question, Jay. So
Yeah.
when you saw that scene where Paul killed his grandfather, and he called him grandfather first,
Yeah.
and the look on his eyes, on the Baron's face, was that an iconic moment for you?
Yeah,
How did you feel watching it? Huh?
I was surprised. Right. Just like just like I found out, just like when they said that he was saying that was his. But I knew before, because when Paul said to his mother, like, you know, about who her father was, so I already knew that was his. Just like he referenced to the to Faye about being cousin. So I knew that already, because he acknowledged his mom being like,
Harkonnen.
I was like, damn. So to me, I was more reflecting off of the Baron's look in his eye, like, what? You know, kind of thing. And then the people around watching more so, because I already knew the truth because of his, conversation with his mom, which really was the moment for me that was just kind of like, wow.
So that's a
trip.
So that was an iconic moment for you?
I didn't see that coming. And I thought it was just so funny.
Okay.
And it made me think about real world, like how, like a lot of the politicians and stuff we have, they all related. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's, people compare this to the original movie. I was comparing this to our government, our religion, and our stuff like that. I was doing one to all that stuff, and like, this is just too much. You know, we're playing for the same team and don't know. We choosing, but we're playing for the same team and we don't know it. And how all the stuff happens behind the scenes. So I took it more like a lesson in government and religion, more so than I did anything else.
So because of you and my friend Brian from last night, I have problems with this film. I don't have as many. I had different problems with this film versus the first one, but the fact that Denis made that scene iconic for you and for other people who have not read the book, this movie is successful. If this movie gets people to read those books, then okay, I have to recommend the movie begrudgingly. Because that was always an important scene for me, and for me, I wanted more, but I didn't think about, well, if I didn't read the book, how would I have felt about seeing that scene in this movie? Because that would have been a great surprise for me, but I already knew about it. You didn't, and for a lot of people who haven't read the book, that should be an aha moment for them.
But I wouldn't have been taken back if that moment wouldn't have happened. Like, say they wasn't related or whatever, then I still enjoyed it. It wasn't like that. It wasn't like I didn't like the movie, and then as soon as I found out they were connected, it was like, aha. It was just like, that's kind of how that crap works. And once again, it's another thing that they never normally give us in these kind of stories, but they did. And I thought,
but I get that. But what I'm talking about though is that, to me, that moment is so important because it ties the whole thing together. And when you don't have that moment, it's doing the film a disservice. But people don't know because they don't know about it. But it's like can I even watch Empire Strikes Back without that scene? Can I enjoy that movie without that scene between Darth Vader and Luke? That scene just put everything in focus. It just made the movie even better. When things were falling apart, just Han Solo getting frozen, all that, everything went bad. But that scene, I always go back to that scene. So I see the importance of that scene, and now I'm gauging other moments in other films, especially like in science fiction, like that with that. So that's why I put so much on people knowing who the Baron was to Paul, how this mortal enemy, how he's been trained to hate all his life, is his direct ancestor. I mean,
I thought it was cool, but like I said, I liked it in spite of that. But like,
right.
And the thing too is that the fact that Star Wars is was more taken by folks in general, that these kind of moments of I am your father or whatever, those are it's almost a trope now. And so it's like one of those kind of things. You could be the originator or something, but if you don't
put it out there first, no one knows.
Present it in a certain kind of way first, then you're copying them.
Because Frank Herbert did it first, but they didn't know. They didn't know. So I hear
so it's always very interesting. Like I said,
I gotta think about that. Maybe I'll take that back, but we'll see. But
it was it was a hard thing to thread, especially like I said, he's trying not to redo the thing that's already been done. And I think I even heard him saying that he's trying to keep the intentions of Herbert's, what he was trying to say with it. And so he's admitting that he is doing the book, but also kind of his intentions. Because he had mentioned something that I'm not going to even say on here because it might be related to something that's coming up later. But he was saying that he was considering everything that was done about this series and stuff. And with that, you can move differently. As opposed
Well, yeah, there's so much more material now. There's more books. There's backstories that he can add.
But also with that, unlike the original stories, you could be thinking you're going down a narrative a certain kind of way, right? But then later on, more stuff is added. And then you'd be like, well, if I knew this, I would have did the beginning differently. And so he's doing something that the original author couldn't do because the hindsight. So sometimes somebody can have a clear interpretation of the artist's work only because they have the full breadth of it versus just the beginning part, you know, because if you knew everything, you would have everything laid out where you, front and back, no matter where you went, it would be connected. But there's a lot of stuff that has to be revised and changed a little bit to make stuff fit. And so it's just interesting that he is doing this with somebody's intention, because we could think something about something and be wrong, right? We have an interpretation of it and be wrong.
Sure.
But if you could do it over again with what you knew now, you would start it different. You would start differently. Yeah. And so I kind of feel this is kind of like, okay, this is your story that you wrote, but this is kind of the intentions that you kind of had as well. And so I could put things in it earlier than you would have put yourself, because you didn't come to that part yet when you did.
So, I mean, I guess
that makes sense what I'm saying?
Yeah. I guess what I have to say, you know, is just that there were definitely things I liked about it, and I could have seen myself giving it a full approval, but I see half measures. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I guess that's part of the problem. Like I said, Austin Butler's performance was great. And when Paul took the water of life, and like I said, when he said silence, like I said earlier, you know, talk more about him being a Kwisatz Haderach and how he can be in, you know, more than one place at a time, how he can see, show his power, and then leave us with that. So everyone's like, I can't wait to see what happens next. I didn't feel that way when I walked out of the theater. You know, I was happy to see that the Emperor got his, but I felt like, okay, there's all this talk about what the Bene Gesserit's doing, but, you know, you need to say now, he's ahead of his time. He came before he was supposed to. What you gonna do now? He's one of you, but a male version, and he sees both sides. Say that, and you didn't. But like you said, I mean,
it's not over, and like I said, yeah.
Is it supposed to be? I heard there wasn't going to be a part 3. They was just going to go like.
He said that he's working on. I don't know how. Okay, I don't know what he's going to incorporate into it, but he's working on a part 3. So I don't know if that's going to be a different book or the rest of this story or the part of the book, the next book over. I don't know, okay. But he's saying he's working on a script that he's still hammering out, but he got the most of it together. Okay. And so I couldn't imagine it being too far off track from what's going so far, but you know, but still, that doesn't tell you exactly what parts he's going to put in or negate or what he's going to, because I will definitely say a lot of the insight and information really start kicking in towards the end of the movie. And that's with a lot of stuff. A lot of enlightenment was coming up towards the end. We had so much action stuff going, and then they kind of did a dump. Now they did a nice dump as far as being able to put a whole bunch of stuff in a good way where it fed into the story and things were happening while it was being said, but it was still a lot of dumping at the end and a lot of truths and things coming out that wasn't said before at the end. So I can't imagine that it would be more of that continuing on with the next one coming up, being that we just came off of this dip of a ride of a movie on this section of the ride. So we'll see.
Sorry, I wanted to really bring up real quick, Jason, because you talked about, you know, how Denny's version doesn't talk about those, you know, creature or humans that are basically become these creatures that allow for the travel, right? The interstellar travel.
The Guild Navigators.
The high what are they? The Highliners in the book, or I can't remember their names, but and I kind of understand why Danny didn't do that in the first or second one. It's in line with the style that he's incorporated with both movies, where it's even the second one, as much as there was more action in the second one versus the first one, there's still like a slow burn in terms of like the information he provides. And something as big as that,
Yeah.
like where these humans become these creatures, that is so big that the movie would literally have to have another hour and a half just to cover because when he covers new stuff, that's the reason why his movies are so long.
Right.
Is he doesn't try to rush. He's very organic. He tries to be very like a methodical way of introducing something to allow it to kind of sit and resonate with the audience, versus just like you're just dumping information and you just accept it as you have to accept that there's these things and I'm not really going to put any information behind it and you just accept it for what it is. No, but what he does is instead he allows, that's why his movies are so long, because he allows the organic slow burn to set into the story so that you could accept what he's telling you as fact for that movie.
Yeah, so, like I was saying, it wouldn't match the environment. So I said I understand the things about about the space worm things. I understand the thing about, like I said, the sister, Paul's little sister stuff. So like I said, I understand the stuff that was negated because, like I said, that's not the world he built, and this is his interpretation, and he is trying to stay on that line of being popular but also being kind of anti-culture. He's at that fine line. And it's almost where both sides can't resist. If you like artsy movies, you got this one. You want action movies, you got this one. You want, intrigue, you got this one. You got a thriller, you got this one. You want a fight scene, you got this. So he's threading a lot of lines. And so it takes a certain director to be able to do that. And because with Lynch, he did a great job, but he was very direct. But very direct gives you very exact answers and responses back as well. There's not a whole bunch of, that net is to catch something in particular, and you will catch it when you have a strong net that's shaped this long, this wide. You're going to catch something that's going to be that size. Something that's kind of weaved a little wider, a little oblong, and it's going to catch more stuff. So you're playing that kind of thing, but it's not as big as a net as Star Wars was that almost caught everything. So he has a customized net, not in particular where it just catches certain size fish, but he catches medium size versus Star Wars, who catches sharks and dolphins and and goldfish and all that. So it's a whole different net that he made and that he designed. And like I said, it's a beautiful blockbuster independent film.
It's interesting though that and I agree with you where you said, Jason, where you said that there's kind of like a dump at the end where in order to it's as much as there's action throughout this movie, it still feels like it's like a slow, methodical, and then all of a sudden things ramp up. But it feels like, at least for me, it felt like things got kind of rushed in the end of the movie in order to get to where he was trying to get to. And I do want to go back to something Keith talked about, the style of the way they ride the worms. I didn't like that either, Keith. Because the thing I thought that was a kind of a dumb way to, not dumb, but it's just like, it's not the ideal way, and why the Lynch version is a better way, where the worms are actually on top of the sand, where they're these gigantic. Because one of the things the flaws I saw in the way Denny did it, where they're like still in the sand, so it looks like they're like basically surfing on the sand. If you have it that way, they're ground level, right? Yeah. So you could literally, as an enemy, you can literally just shoot them because they're at the same level you are. But if you, in the Lynch version, they're literally hundreds of feet above the ground, where it's like, aside from the intimidation factor, where if you see this gigantic worm coming at you and you're on ground level.
But you still could shoot them from a spaceship. You still could shoot down on top of them, no matter how tall they are. You're in a spaceship.
I know, but ground troops. I'm talking about the level of the ground, because it first starts off with like the ground troop level, like when you're fighting. Because it's coming from the perspective of like they're coming as a sneak attack. If you know they're coming, of course you're gonna already stop.
Those things that big, regardless if they on top of it or halfway through it, they're still bigger than the things that's on the ground, and they still scoop them up and run them over, regardless.
But and they I don't know.
They still can be shot from the space. Well, they showed you. Didn't they show them coming across everything and kind of knocking it all out of the way? That was a big dramatic scene. Y'all didn't catch that part.
And Yeah, but and another thing, and I know this is I'm going
Wait a
back.
minute,
into
wait a minute, wait. So y'all say y'all didn't see when they came across all those tanks and troops and all that kind of stuff? Y'all, because people in grounds, people in tanks and ships and stuff. Y'all didn't see when those worms came and knocked through all that stuff?
I saw that. But
So what are you
but
talking
my-
about? You didn't see it, or did Keith? You say you didn't see it?
No, I saw it. I saw.
I don't remember that part. I don't think.
I'm
But
saying,
again,
I am saying from a strategic, yes, if you're on a worm, whether it's like underground or above ground, at the end of the day, if the worm comes at you, what are you going to do about it? You can't do anything
Right.
on the other side of that.
Right.
My point is, and then this is, again, I hate to do this. This is from the book kind of thing, because if the people who don't read it, they're not going to care. But the whole thing about them being above ground is, when they show the scene, when they pull back the skin of the worm, right, with the hooks, in Herbert's the book, when they do that, it makes the worm turn up because they don't want sand to go into the open, in that open exposed skin. And so the reason why that in Lynch's version, why they're above ground, is because they're protecting that exposed part of their skin that is pulled up by the hooks from getting sand into that exposed area. That's why they're above the ground. And let's forget about that. Let's just say from a tactical military standpoint, yes, if you have the worms, it doesn't matter if they're underground. Once they come at you, you can't do anything, right? Either way. But you have to say that from a military standpoint, in terms of pure intimidation, if you actually see it above ground coming at you, I mean, you're just
it's scary.
It's supposed to terrify the
Yeah.
that the Emperor's fighting troops, which is up until the point of when they found out the Fremen were actually better fighting troops. Those Sardaukar troops are actually supposed to be the ultimate like military troops. The fact of seeing those worms, if they're above, like that would just terrify anybody trying to like. If you see an enemy coming at you with gigantic 500-foot worm.
But did you see the part when they were coming at him and you saw like the almost looked like the teeth of the worms coming at him? It wasn't like it was halfway in. Did you see when they were coming?
No, I saw that.
And also when he grappling on and he was almost falling off, you saw how much of a drop he had if he fell off. So that's how high up off the ground that he is. So I'm not understanding.
Well, I guess I didn't like the aesthetic of them when they're riding the worms and they're like look like they're just kind of like moons walking across. You know what I'm saying? Like it
didn't look like that to me, but that's
underneath
fine.
the ground basically.
Yeah, I don't know. I just I mean
just when they were riding them across the desert, it just because we're used to seeing them on top of the desert when they're riding them, and it just looks very cool and it's intimidating. You're like, what's going on? You're riding a worm?
I wonder too if doing it that way was the cheaper way in terms of CGI versus seeing this gigantic. I mean, you saw the worms, yes, we saw the worms, but we never really saw like the way Lynch does it, and you could tell because the CGI back then wasn't what it is now, so you could clearly tell it's not going to be as good. But in Denny's version, I never really see a scene where, like, if they're on the worm, it's close up. I never really see where the worm is above ground and then they're on top of the worm. It's always like you're all close up, or it's just the worm by itself. Like, you could see like the head of the worm with the jaws.
I saw several scenes like that, especially when he got the grandpa worm and he was like riding it, and all that stuff that wasn't sand where it was halfway in, that was sand kicking up from it going across. And but you never really saw, like in Lynch's version, you'll see where they're like this gigantic, like exposed out. Well, the special effects ain't gonna be the same. It ain't gonna be. It'd probably be less. Okay, put it like this. I don't think that Lynch would be having extra sand kicking up dust. It wouldn't be as realistic for that. So if you had a giant worm going across the sand with no dust coming up, I think that would be less realistic. But that's what they probably would have then.
No, I know, but what I'm saying is that I think that I don't know if it was done because of it's like hard to do that effect like without it being like cheesy or like somehow like.
So when you saw the worms coming out to attack, right, the emperor and all that kind of stuff, and attack all the folks, did that look fake to you? Because that shows the whole mouths and stuff being open and coming towards you. So that's
no, it doesn't look like. But I'm saying that you never actually see where if there's somebody on, if the Fremen are on the worm, or when Paul is on the worm, or even when they're taking the mom to the south and she's in that little protective cubby hole she's in, it's always close up, right you never actually see it from a distant shot where it's above ground, because they established it where it was always going to be underground unless it's going to rear up to attack.
Okay, so when Paul was riding it across, did you see him on top of that from a distance, or you saw it close up? When they was waving at him like, hey, Paul.
Whenever you see them riding, it's always under the sand.
That wasn't under sand. That was sand kicking up. He was above ground when he was riding, because like I said, you saw how high it was, because when he fell off and was hanging on by the hook, he was like trying not to fall and get lost in the dust and the sand and stuff.
No, I know, but that
and so when I
remember, that was close up. I'm not saying that.
No.
I'm just saying that I felt like they were intentionally trying to not show them above, like when people are riding it, they were intentionally not trying to show any long shot, distant shot. It was always very close up, and I think it's because with it was good. It's not. I have no complaints about the actual effects. Very good.
I would just refer you to the trailer where it shows Paul riding it, and you see the folks like, hey, and they waving at him, and you see him in the distance. And matter of fact, you can't see him waving back. He's so far. That's not a close-up shot. And when they showed all three kind of on top and kind of spreading, going different directions, how they were steering them different ways, that was an overhead shot. That wasn't right on them. Is what I'm.
I don't. Maybe I'm just. It's just. I'm just being OCD about the details. I just feel like, nothing against the thing, but I just feel like they were trying to. I don't know if it's because to add also the intrigue and mystery of the worms and what they represented, but I just feel like they didn't show enough how really daunting and intimidating in terms of size that the worms are. I get it the way he did it, but I just feel like it was done through a filter. I guess I'll say it that way. It felt like it was done.
Yeah, I was disappointed with it myself. So,
but I mean, it's not something that would have made me like not recommend the movie. I still like the movie for what it was, and I tried, like I said, I tried to separate as much as possible and pretend that I didn't read the books and that I didn't watch the Lynch movie, and just watch and see if I could enjoy this movie on its own merit. And I did enjoy this movie on its own merits.
Okay, when you get a chance, I'll send you guys something, a screenshot from the thing.
Oh, I remember that.
Okay, I'm just saying, but
I remember that scene. Yeah.
Oh, okay, just saying. But was it anything else? I'm trying to think. There was so much in this movie, but we did.
So, do you guys understand what I mean when I say I didn't really care for Rebecca Ferguson's portrayal?
No, I liked her. Like, I still liked her.
Compared to Francesca Annis, it's like night and day. It just
because it's a different interpretation.
It was too dark for me. Just
like
too
Paul.
hard.
Just like Paul looked like a grown man to me, but I know he's supposed to be a kid. It's just like, 90210. So sometimes you just kind of like, oh, I'm in high school for 12 o'clock shadow, and that's fine because he's supposed to be a kid. Right. Or Peter Parker, Tommy McGuire. I had to think that he was in high school, even though he was a grown man running after that bus. Let me on.
I mean, I feel you, but I mean, Rebecca she was too hardened. I just didn't care for it. Very masculine. She seemed more like the Reverend Mother, Helen Geis Mohim. She, like I said, when I looked at her, I didn't feel like this was Paul's mom. I didn't feel like this was this beautiful Bene Gesserit woman who was bound to duty but defied it because of her love for the Duke. I didn't get that vibe from her at all. I got manipulation from her, and just hard edge, and just not soft at all. I mean,
I'll say, Keith, I agree with you in terms of the first movie, that I didn't like Ferguson's interpretation of where, in terms of like being loving, where why would this woman defy the orders of, like, the way she acted in both movies? I would think that, well, she would have actually gone in line with what
exactly
Bene Gesserit. I'll say that in the first movie. I'll say in the second movie, once she took the water of life, that she goes, that interpretation fits in terms of, because we have to remember too, once we find out in the second movie that she is Harkonnen, that would make sense why she is like cold and detached, and because she is Harkonnen. She's not a trait, it's like by blood, so she would have the traits of the Harkonnen, in which there's a ruthlessness in a very strategic, very strategy type of thinking that falls more in line with the Harkonnen versus like the heartfelt emotion of the trait inside, which she doesn't have because she's not a trait.
Like I said, she had a different job in the first one than she did the second one. I thought the first one, she felt like more like a concerned mom, and not that she didn't in the second one, because she did there as well, but she had so much stuff coming upon her. Like, it's almost like she's trying to control the situation and stay ahead of it because she knows more, but it's getting her into more trouble, and she has to be deeper than she would like to be. And you can see the point where she felt uncomfortable, like, hey, you're going to be the mother, and she's kind of like, I don't want to take this thing. So it's funny how she wants things to work a certain kind of way, but it's only if she's only invested so much, but she has to kind of be put, and so she gets drug along in this whole thing. But I think it cost her more than she thought it was going to cost her, and so to see her more on top of things versus I'm in it now and I gotta figure out how to steer from this new positioning, I thought that was kind of interesting. I like how she kind of handled herself. I liked her less because I really saw that she didn't care. She was really about self, and she's not wrong. She's caring about her and her son and her baby, and I understand that. And so she has a different kind of thing where she would have to do some messed up stuff to win, and she's choosing for her to win, and it's not wrong for her, but it could cost everybody else so much. Because we already saw that she already chose herself when she chose to give Paul's father a son instead of a daughter. So we've seen her kind of going outside what she's supposed to be doing already. But this was a different situation. But we saw her being calculated. But then you also know that when she took that stuff and she, had those other mothers before her in her, you could see the personality change. You could see the concerns being a little bit different, her being more calculated and stuff. So I didn't put it all on her. I took it partly because she wasn't of her own mind. She has a little daughter that's kind of giving her, nudging her in a way too. And she even had concerns like, she's talking to me, Paul, she's talking to me. So it's all this stuff that she's being steered. And so it's amazing that she didn't just lose her mind with all the prodding that she's getting from all these different directions. And so for her to still, find herself within that, I'll give her credit for it. But you could tell that she wasn't the same person, but really she wasn't the same person in this one. And
I'll give you that.
You couldn't.
No, you're right. No, point taken. No. In that regard, once she took the water of life, she wasn't going to be the same person. Not with all those memories from all the women before her, all the Reverend mothers who ever existed.
But even a sister on her was taking a toll on her, and that's the one she kind of called out. So I kind of assumed all the rest of it was coming along with that drink. And she even said, like, I get everything. I get all the information. I get all that stuff. I also even get all the pain, which she didn't want to go through. So as you can see, she was kind of reluctant in a lot of the stuff. But she's going to get dragged through it regardless. And it was interesting to see her kind of fight that. And it gave me a different kind of respect for her. Did I like her? I didn't like her as much as I did the first one, but she had to be a different person. Just like Paul, I started kind of looking at him sideways. I liked him when he was fighting, his path that he's supposed to take. And I kind of respected him, because when everybody thought he was afraid or unconfident, like he knew what it meant. And that's why he was reluctant. And so when I see that he accepted it and he's going to go for it anyway, I'm like, man, I understand that you think you could do this, but you taking the people on this trip that you may not be able to keep them safe. But for sure, you're going to get your part out of it. And it's your revenge, right? It's the ego. You still went with ego, and your ego made you think you could do this and get yours and give them theirs in a way. And I thought, I liked you better when you kind of fought it, but I understand, it was a lot going on, and he had more information that made him feel like I could do this now. right? You know, I saw a little bit before with the spice. Now I see a little bit more with the, you know, with the life water. And so sometimes, you know, you get more, or you think you could do more, but that doesn't mean that you're above slipping and falling.
Well, and to be fair to Paul Atreides / Muad'Dib, he had to do what he had to. He had to do it. The Baron, the Harkonnens couldn't. They couldn't stay on that planet, and the Emperor and the Harkonnens have to be stopped because they just get worse. I mean, so I guess it's a question of who's going to be better in the long run. You know, will he be a better leader? Will there be peace in the universe? Will Arrakis change? Will the Fremen be better off? I mean, those are questions that you know that you're left with. So yeah, he was very
it's almost like the passionate pimp thing. It's like, well, he was a pimp, but he was a passionate pimp. It's like, it's still a pimp.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, Paul has to get his hands dirty, definitely. I mean, I get that, and you're right, but it's just like when you think about what the Emperor put in motion, and the Harkonnens were just happy to oblige.
No,
how everyone's being manipulated by the Bene Gesserit still, but I mean, what I like about this story, I guess in the overall, even though we have a messianic figure, and we do, what I like about this story is that when you see these powerful women who are nicknamed witches from some people, who have mastery of their body and their physiology and in the mind, they can control you with their voice, they can beat you in battle, they can control the reproductive organs. I mean, when
they
you
can change poison. They can change poison.
They can change poison. So they're bad. They're amazing. And that, you know, and they're beautiful and they can seduce anybody. I mean, I get all that. But what I like about the story, at the end of the day, it shows you what happens when power corrupts. And it shows you, even with them, as powerful as they were from behind the scenes, and as arrogant as they were, they thought they could create something that they could control, that they had been trying to do for hundreds of years with, and what everybody missed, especially the Emperor, the Harkonnens, and the Bene Gesserit, they underestimated the power of love. And that's, to me, in a nutshell, and I think I spoke about this probably in our first podcast about this, when I think about Dune in that first book, the power of love. It wasn't for Jessica's love for Duke Leto and giving him that son, that changed everything for everyone. And because the Bene Gesserit, that's the one thing they don't value. They don't value love. Not at all. It's nothing for them to send a woman to a house and say, have 3 or 4 of his kids, and then call her back and have her go to another house and do the same thing. It's nothing for them to do that. It's almost, in some ways, it's kind of creepy, like slavery. Yeah, so it's nothing for them to do that. And they think, it's greater good. I mean, there's probably a psychology behind all that. I mean, but it's just like, in some ways, it's like being kind of like a loveless whore. It's who has power. It's very interesting and intriguing, but whether it's a woman or a man with power, here we go again. When you don't have love and you're consumed with this corruption, and you underestimate the value of what love can do, inspire people, unite people, make them brave, make them rebellious. It's just interesting to me that when you look at all the different layers of this story and that universe, for me, that's what it goes back to, is the underestimating of love and the true power that has.
Yeah. And I kind of take it as when two powerful beings fight against each other, like King Kong and Godzilla, Tokyo loses.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, there are repercussions for the Bene Gesserit, for the Harkonnens, and for the Atreides, for Cornell. Yeah.
So all this power grabbing, the Fremen is the one that's losing, regardless
for the universe.
For all the stuff that they're doing, it's the Fremen who's on the bottom.
Well, I don't know.
For now. Huh?
I don't know if this should be a separate conversation, but this movie definitely kind of made me see the Atreides in a different light, where I would almost argue that the Atreides, except for the idea of like avenging your father and what the Harkonnens and what the Emperor did, I would almost argue that you could say that Atreides are actually the bad guys in this version of the story, the Dune story, because as much as what happened to Duke Leto and how the Atreides family was drastically affected, we never know. I mean, if things had been left status quo and the Harkonnens, because we have to remember that the whole thing about Leto, like the Emperor played both the Atreides and the Harkonnens, because initially, remember, the only reason why the Atreides family were able to go on Dune and fight against the Harkonnens was because the Emperor was allowing them to do that, and also giving them the power to do that. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done that. But if things had been left the way they were, where the Harkonnens were still, because you have to remember that the Harkonnens were very successful in terms of getting the spice. They became very wealthy, a wealthy family because of spice mining, and to all the other houses that needed spice, as you could not like the Harkonnens, but they were doing a good job in doing it. If things had been left status quo, I mean, aside from Leto not being killed, I mean, the Fremen still being under the yoke of the Harkonnens, although they're under the yoke of whichever house goes there, which ended up being the Atreides. Who's to say that if things were just left the way they were, that there wouldn't have been as much bloodshed as there is now, where now it's going to ramp up because of the fact that now the Fremen and Paul, being their leader, are basically warring against all the other houses. I mean, yes, that's a path he mentions. The Atreides Paul says that there's that narrow path. That's the best path to take in terms of the least amount of collateral damage. But there is still going to be collateral damage. So can you argue that in this version and Denny's version that the Atreides, you can view them as actually, I'll say that they're actually worse than the Harkonnens. Because with the Harkonnens, yes, they're portrayed as bad guys. It's only against the Atreides. They don't go against the other houses. Paul is actually going to go against the rest of the houses. That's a bigger thing than just, it's going beyond just avenging your father. You're actually like making it personal by, it's not business anymore. You're like in Godfather. It's not personal.
But it actually is business though, Joselito, because everyone's been manipulated. The Emperor and the House Harkonnen, they manipulated the whole situation. So, I mean, to be fair to the other houses, when they get that message that Paul's going to be the new emperor, that's the first time they're hearing about that. First of all, they thought he was dead. Second of all, they don't know what happened on Dune. They have no idea of all the shenanigans that went down in the treachery. Right. They have no idea.
They're just supposed to get wiped off and disappear.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I know.
All they know is that the emperor. I mean, they don't know that the emperor put all this in motion.
Right.
That he was shady as hell.
Yeah, but let's.
So
okay.
hold on. So from the noble houses standpoint, from the Lancerage standpoint, they're like, we don't know you. Why are you the new emperor when we're all here? There was no, we don't know nothing about what's going on with you. We ain't seen you in 10, 15 years. We don't know nothing. As far as we know, you are the bad guy. So now, and Paul has to defend his decision now. He has to defend what he's done and what he's gone through. So they've all been manipulated and forced into this situation. So, and that goes back to everybody who's been manipulating, the Bene Gesserit, but especially the Emperor. The Emperor knew what he was doing. The Emperor did this, but they don't know that. So it's sad. I mean, it's sad because he has to do this now.
But also the Emperor probably was kind of like being manipulated too by Bene Gesserit.
He was
on the outside, and his daughter. So he's kind of surrounded and don't even know it, possibly.
Exactly.
In the way that it's happening.
Yeah. So this is Paul. I mean, so this is a situation, and the only way through it is going to be through force, because there's no talking. Because even if he were to meet with these houses and talk to them, they're not going to believe him per se. Because, like I said, they ain't seen this boy. All they know, he's been gone. Unless they've had bad interactions with the Emperor, they're going to be like, all we know is that you're like a usurper, dude.
Okay, let's look at it this way then. Aside from what the Emperor and the Harkonnens did to try to destroy the Atreides house, right? That's just that one incident or the attempt of what they were trying to do. Aside from, let's put that aside. And from a practical business standpoint, in terms of all you care about is the money, right? You get the most amount of money with the least amount of collateral damage. Wouldn't you say that we understand why Paul is doing what he's doing. Anyone in that position, like if your family was they're trying to exterminate your family, you would want to get back at the ones who did that to you. I totally get that. But taking it to the next level where, okay, if let's say somebody tried to kill my family, I would, normal rational thinking beyond emotion is like, okay, I'm gonna get back the ones who tried to hurt me. Am I gonna, like, after that turn around and say, well, now I'm gonna, the neighbors are asking, why did you do this thing, right? And instead of explaining, oh, I'm gonna kill all of you now because now you're trying to like what did we do? We're just like, we didn't know that this person tried to kill your family or killed your father. Why are you attacking us? I mean, that's the way I'm looking at it. I'm just saying that this movie made me like see a different perspective of the possibility that the Atreides could actually be viewed as bad guys, as much as you see the Harkonnens are the bad guys because they portray them as a psychotic fade, and also everything is like black and white, and everything clearly is trying to make it seem like they're the clear-cut bad guy. But just like the whole manipulation of the Bene Gesserit and all this political intrigue behind the scenes, for all we know, the Atreides are not any better than any of the houses if they were put in that same position. Because at the end of the day, whichever house, why can't the Fremen like run that plan? Why does it have to be a house that runs that plan?
Right. I never took it as one being nicer than the other. I just took it that they had issues. I took it as a family fight, in-house fighting. I never took it one being nicer than the other, because really they're all oppressors. So I honestly didn't think none of you're gonna go by the side of who's telling the story, like I said earlier. So whoever's telling the story, that's who ride you're going on. And so, but in this story, we just chose an oppressor to go. It's almost like that thing with The Walking Dead. You had the people with Negan, you had people with Rick, and it's like, oh, you're following Rick, so Rick is the good guy. But when Negan flipped the story and was like, hey, you came into my camp and killed my people. To me, you're my Negan.
That was a good.
So, but I'm saying, so it's just whoever story you're following. But are they all murderers? Yes. Are they all, dictators? Yes. They all, taking advantage of the people, the indigenous people, and pillaging their lands for their resources? Yes. Yes. Are they enslavers? Yes. 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 But we're just watching the story about the in-house fighting amongst brothers and sisters. That's pretty.
And how the
Tokyo
story goes,
suffers.
Well, and how the story goes at the end when he's in the hall and he's killed Fade. He doesn't really have enough time to explain to the Lancerod what all went down at that moment. So he's got to be like, look, check it out. I'm going to be the new emperor. I'm going to marry his daughter. That's what's going on. That's why, I should all the spice floor down. So he doesn't have time to have that conversation. He should have that conversation, but now that's not the time to have it.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. It also adds the intrigue of like having the next movie, and it is still in line with the books because he does basically have a jihad. That's the whole purpose of why he didn't want to do it in the first place, because it is going to be bloodshed. But in the movie, there is a point when he says, remember when all the ships, the other houses are up there, he says, if they try to do anything, tell them we're going to destroy all the spice. And that should have been, and I know, of course you have to have it the way it ended because it adds the intrigue of the next movie. I'm just saying that once you have that threat and then they didn't, why do you still have to launch? Okay, then delay tactic you needed. So you can still explain to them why you did what you did. You don't have to. I'm just bringing it as as a counterpoint I don't
Yeah.
want that to be the thing. I like the way it ended, and I want the idea of this intrigue of the next movie with the war. I like that. I'm just as a kind of like just devil's advocate. I'm saying that if you already put the threat that I'm going to destroy the spice, and that holds them back, wouldn't that be the delay tactic you need? Then you can explain to them exactly all the details without actually launching this attack on, like, they're wondering what the hell's, we're not being filled in, and all of a sudden you're at our house with tanks and you're about to attack us.
That makes sense, but like I said, I don't know what the director is going to end up doing or writing and how he's going to work it in, or the book or whatever. But I know if you need somebody off your butt, you better threaten or whatever's important to them. That's why people have hostages. So the spice is a hostage before they come in. Now, sometimes it's a misunderstanding, and it'd be like, hey, I got somebody in my ear that's telling me to do this stuff. Please don't. But they got to do it to stop you, to pause, so we could make sense of this whole thing. Now, this guy could really be the bad guy, and he could have did stuff wrong. Or it could be like somebody verifying like he won this honestly. But a lot of times, people are going to come in with guns ablazing unless you say something. You know, if you don't say something to the cops before they come in, they're going to just run in and get you. So you know you got to be something you got to say to keep them at bay. So at least you could at least talk. Because you know if you don't, the assumptions will get you killed.
Yeah, and the thing is once they knew that he was going to destroy the spice, they should have sit back down and said, let's talk.
Right.
So, I mean, so either side could have said, hey, we need to talk. Really did.
And like I said, we don't know. He gave them the thing. They don't want to acknowledge who he is, and that's fair because they don't know. Like you said, that dude should be dead.
Yeah, they don't know.
Even everybody in the room was surprised he was alive. So
Exactly.
so that's fair. Like somebody's up there, prank calling us saying that he's Paul. Like who's Paul? The ghost? Fire. You know what I mean? So all they keeping them at bay is the fact that the threat of losing all that money. So that's fair. And it's a good place to end it because it's just kind of like, okay, it's a stalemate for now. So them not attacking because they're afraid, that's fair. Them being confused, that's fair. For it to be a stalemate and to keep us as a placeholder until the next movie comes up, I think it was good. I enjoyed it. I saw it twice.
I can respect that. I do think that I think people watching this film are going to be entertained, definitely. And probably the mistake I've made is as I should have been like Joselito and not thought about the books, so much when I watched this, because I used to tell people, watch the movie first, then read the book. If you read the book first and you watch the movie, it's gonna probably ruin it for you because this book has so much detail, and everyone knows how detailed the story is and how it's been so hard to translate to film. It's not just automatically palatable, but I do feel like because of who Denis Villeneuve is and how gifted he is as a director, especially with the cinematography, I do feel like there will be lots of people who are probably converted, more Dune fans probably because of part 2. So in that regard, begrudgingly, I have to say they should watch it. If that's going to get anybody to go read the books, so I'm changing my view. I begrudgingly say go see it.
Oh wow! Did we actually do that? We actually got you to.
Oh, you were light on the fence too, Joselito. Stop it. Stop it.
No, on the first movie, I didn't.
Well, yeah, I still don't like the first movie.
I did not recommend the first movie. I just said that for myself. There were problems, but I like the second movie.
Okay.
The second movie is better. I did admit that, but yeah, begrudgingly, go see the film because if you've seen part 2, you'll probably like it.
It's okay.
And
so,
like I said, if that's going to get people to want to read the book, then they've done their job. Anytime I see a movie that makes me want to read afterwards, you did your job, at least for me.
That's Captain Keeps. We're closing out. So what are you saying, Joselito?
Okay, I will say that Dune 2, I would recommend this movie. It's definitely a great movie. If you've read the books or watched the Lynch movie, I would recommend to separate those from watching this movie. And if you separate those from Dune 2, then you'll enjoy Dune 2.
Okay.
He's right. That's what I should have done. He's right.
All right. I enjoyed the movie. I enjoyed the first movie a lot. I enjoyed this one, not as much, but then when I saw it again, I think I like it just as much, and I like how it connects to the first one. Only thing I can really compare it to was the original movie, which I don't really compare it because, like I said, it's a whole different thing, and I kind of see it as a separate entity. So I kind of treat it as that. So I'm just kind of using the information and feeling off of what I'm seeing and how it relates to the story that this director is telling and showing. I'm digging the characters, I'm digging the storytelling, I'm digging the world building, digging the lore, I'm digging the questioning of Messiah or society or government or capitalism. All those things is very relatable. It's very now. Like I said, I think it was a neat trick to figure out a way to do Dune without doing Dune and without doing Star Wars and those other movies that's definitely borrowed from this. I think that they did a great job of finding a middle ground where it's part art house movie, it's part blockbuster, and it's a nice clear voice that if you aren't to like sci-fi or this kind of lore, but don't want all the questionable parts that you're not open for or ready for, this is a good entry. It's kind of like, you know, like chicken tikka masala. It's you know, it's cultured food, but then it has some cream in there to kind of thin it out for your palate if you can't really take spicy or certain kind of foods. So this is one of those kind of things that kind of, it gives you the culture, but not too much. And so it's one of those kind of, yeah, so it's one of those kind of things. If you really like it, you'll dip into other deeper things. And you have the mini series, you have the David Lynch, you have the actual books. And so I think this is a nice entryway into the lore, the stories and stuff. And if it's not done exactly the same way that was done in a different medium, at least this is, you still get all the feels, you still get all the little parts. So even though it's done differently, you still get the overall feeling of what's supposed to be going on. And like I said, it's a hard thing to juggle and to pull off. I think it's going pretty good so far. I'm really enjoying these movies. Can't wait for the third one. Hope that there's more, but I know there's supposed to be a show that's coming on HBO about the Bene Gesserits. So I'm looking forward to that. That's supposed to be coming up soon. So I think it's gonna be more insight. And I know some stuff that people like or different kind of characters or different cultures and stuff that was left out. Like it's called the Mentak.
The Mentats. Too far Howard was left out.
Like they were left out. Like those characters, people really like those characters.
Yes.
And that's the whole thing. But you know,
human computer.
The need seems to be leaning into like the Bene Gesserits, and that's
that would be going.
So with him going into this direction, I think that's what he chose. And if somebody else does it later, they might lean into that side of it. And so he's doing with the part that he feel like he has a good narrative to talk about. And sometimes it's better to stick with your strengths and your direction and what you can do versus trying to juggle too much that's out of your league. And if you don't have anything to add, to lend to it, stay out of it. So we're getting the director's taste and what leads to his strengths as a director and a writer. And so, like I said, I'm enjoying what I'm getting so far. It's definitely going to be different than the book, definitely going to be different than the other movies and the other miniseries and stuff. But his interpretation, the things he omitted, the things he put in, the ways he's connected and folded things in, I did truly enjoy. And like I said, I'm looking forward to the next movie. With that being said, man, it was good catching up with you too. This is a great conversation. We covered a lot.
Definitely.
A lot.
Definitely. I wish you could go longer. There's so much more I want to say.
Yeah, you just want to stir the pot, so we could do that. We could do that another day. But we could do more part stirring with your and making up what if stuff when you know that's a whole.
If I want to stir the pot, that's just a testament to how good a movie is. Is if you want to stir the pot, then that means that the movie, for me, it brought out like more than like the expected talking points that most people would want to talk about. That's why I really like this movie, because it started getting me to think about it. Doesn't, like I said, I separate the book and the Lynch movie from this movie, and by being able to do that, I was able to kind of open up to other thinking points that I didn't think about before I saw this movie. So that's a good thing, I think.
Yeah, and that's why I really enjoyed them. Like I said, the first one, I know you guys had, legitimate issues, and it was like, based off of, how you guys felt about it and the truth, but like I said, I didn't read the book, so I didn't really have those kind of things. But, and then me not necessarily caring for the original movie at the time, it also wasn't a stumble for me. But like I said, I saw the movie again with Keith and our friend Linda the original Dune movie. I tried watching it again before, but seeing it on the big screen, and even though it was an edited version, it really made me seeing these other movies made that movie click. And it just made me also see it's a totally different kind of movie, and it's fine for what it was. And it was an interpretation, and that had a lot of stuff to juggle as well. And so, and some things I thought was kind of cool because it was very direct, and you just like, because I had no problem leaning into a whole bunch of weird stuff, but then also, you know, I enjoy how this is insightful in a different kind of way. This is some artist's interpretation of somebody else's work. I mean, like a real different interpretation, not trying to necessarily glean exactly what is in the books, but how he feels about what he saw and how he takes certain things happening. And when you do that, you have a certain eye that and direction that a movie is given because of that, because of your views, because of your perspectives and your feelings about things. Just like if I made this movie be different than how Keith would do it, in the same way it'd be different than how Joselito would do it. But that's the great thing about being an artist and having interpretations. But who would love what the most? Who would know? Who would know? Because then it's up to the audience to decide how they feel about it.
Yeah.
I think if people are really taken to this one, I think, like I said, they might have been, you know, initial good feelings about the first one, but I think more good feelings came because of time and because of it being on streaming and people getting a chance to be familiar and knowing and also pace themselves when watching. And it gave it a great strip to take off of for when the second one came up. And so, like I said, I'm looking forward to a third one, and it was, you know, I had a great time talking with you guys. I didn't know how it was going to go. I know last time was different. It was fun. It was entertaining, but it was, you know, so I didn't know what to expect or how this conversation would go. But I think we hit so much, and even the conversation went wider than I even thought it would. And I appreciate you too, your insight and, you know, knowledge and all that kind of stuff. And just also being willing to have the conversation. You know, it's not easy to sit here and talk for a couple hours about a movie, about anything really. And to have, you know, fresh perspectives and insight and being respectful of each other for our feelings and different interpretations of this art. So I appreciate you both.
One final thing I'll say is that for those who haven't seen the movie, if you got to see this movie in the theater first, don't use the streaming as the first. I mean, if it's still in the theaters, as much as possible, because you have to see it with the screen and the sounds.
Yeah.
That's one thing I'll say about this movie. It definitely is something that is theater worthy in terms of watching.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
Gotcha.
All right. So this was Jay, Captain Keith, and Joselito talking about the movie Dune Part 2 in theaters now. Catch it if you can. Until next time, peace.
See you somewhere out in space.
All right. Take care.
Oh, the game's
I know you. I know you were.
What?
I know, Jason. You're like, let's just end this. We gotta end this soon. And that's another point I wanted to bring up to you guys. One of the things I had a problem with this movie was in the Lynch movie. This is a question I want to ask you both. Do you think if Paul Atreides and his family never went to Arrakis, would the Fremen have been able to defeat the Harkonnens without Paul and his mother and the Atreides family? Would they have been able to beat them? So now, my question is I feel
they
like
weren't organized enough.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Even though I don't know, I will say that there's so many of them. They survived that long. If Paul didn't make them feel that they could win, they wouldn't have their heads out. So I think they probably would be fine. I don't think it would have been this immediate battle. I think the supposed war that's coming wouldn't be happening because people are going to live under the radar for a long time. It's only when you stick your head out is when it gets chopped.
I feel like because the Lynch movie, the one thing that the Lynch movie does that this series so far has not done is I didn't feel that Denny's version showed that the Atreides is the reason why. There's not enough evidence in the first and second movie that doesn't tell me that the Fremen couldn't have just done this by themselves without Atreides. In the Lynch movie, it's an added feature. It's not part of the books, but they have the sound technology in the
weirding modules.
The weirding module.
I remember seeing the Lynch movie.
In the Lynch version, It's
cool.
that, as well as there's a scene when Stilgar, because the late Jessica almost defeats him in a fight, and Stilgar says, "You must teach us." So it's a combination of the technology and the supposed Bene Gesserit fighting skill that is incorporated in the Fremen culture that allows them to be able to, in the leadership of Paul Atreides, that allows them to be able to rise up and defeat the Harkonnens and eventually take the emperorship. Denny's version, I never got the sense that Paul really does anything that lends me to believe they could have just did this themselves. They didn't need. I felt like he was missing something where they could have done something where they talk about the North versus the South, right? And the South is these fanaticals. They missed. Denny missed the thing where he could have said the idea of unifying all these disparate tribes into one unified thing is the reason why in the past they were always oppressed. Like that's what it was missing, where they could have just said like a couple of lines where, like, why haven't you been able to, we have so many like Fremen, why couldn't you?
Because he said religion makes them complacent. That's what Chani said.
Oh, you mean like they're waiting because they're waiting for someone to save them so that they'll take this oppression.
Right.
Even though, like, from the final scene when they're literally, when you see the sandworms coming into the Harkonnen thing, where it's like there's no way they're gonna defeat. Once you see those worms, and it's just like there's no way they have a shot against, like, and there's like, well, how many were there? Weren't even that many. There's like maybe four worms.
Well, if the Lynch had the tuning thing, then this one had the arsenal. And so maybe they saw the arsenal and thought like, hey, this is the power that we can have. Because really that makes more sense than a tuning thing. Because really, if you got ships up there, that tuning thing ain't going to help you none. You really going to need that arsenal. And that was really kind of like the thing that the man brought to the people, the new technology that was going to make it even ground, Because really, they know they can't fight against that kind of technology. And so, yeah, their way to survive is not to uprise. So do I think they would have lived longer? Yeah. And would they have been fighting them? Probably not, because they probably wouldn't have gotten away. They probably just would have been, in the situation that they were in, but they would have been alive.